Yes.
The lead Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1506 of the War News stream. And tonight we have very big news to cover yet again. We have seen that U.S. forces are secretly arriving in the Middle East right now for attacks on Iran, as the ceasefire talks appear to be in the early stages of a failure. We also see that Britain is preparing to shift to a full wartime economy in a major move. And also Taiwan is warning tonight of major escalation around their island, and also some covert Chinese operations to overthrow the Taiwanese government. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we have been able to see significant developments within the Middle East, East Asia, Central Asia, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, and also the Americas over the course of the day. According to information that we have been able to hear out of the Middle East and CENTCOM's area of responsibility, the United States Armed Forces are still moving in with a high amount of volume, as significant airlifts have been conducted throughout the day, and as we are watching live on air right now, there are still significant inbound and outbound supply flights heading in and out of the Middle East at this moment, which seems to be suggesting to us, at least at this moment, that the United States' belief of successful conclusions to the upcoming negotiations are highly unlikely. This has also come at the same time as Iranian delegations have finally physically arrived in Islamabad, Pakistan, just hours before the talks are to begin in their time in a few hours, and it appears that at the moment, the U.S. government, by both the Vice President, the head of the diplomatic delegation in Islamabad, and the President of the United States, have voiced significant words of concern and also voices of distrust about the Iranians over the course of the day, and their belief that anything could be done to see that the Iranians change their minds or largely agree to some sort of an off-ramp in the conflict so far. We've also seen that within the Strait of Hormuz, it is still closed at the moment, and now the Iranians have added on an additional term that they will not open the Strait of Hormuz until the war ends, meaning that they are now looking for a peace treaty to open up the Strait of Hormuz instead of just a ceasefire like they supposedly agreed to in the ceasefire agreement that was made at the moment. Additionally, we have also heard that apparently the Iranians are now claiming that regardless of whatever agreement is made, the Iranians actually don't know where they place their own mines inside of the Strait of Hormuz, so whoopsie daisy, they unfortunately can't clear them out. So regardless of whether or not the Iranians agree to anything, the Strait of Hormuz is going to be closed for an incredibly long time because nobody knows. Well, largely the Iranians are feigning ignorance as to where the mines are, meaning that we would still have to send in forces to try and find the mines and eventually remove them from the Strait of Hormuz. Additionally, the Islamic Republic of Iran conducted attacks on the Kingdom of Kuwait today, and we've also seen that Hezbollah has conducted its own rocket attacks on the State of Israel as Israeli air and ground operations are still ongoing within the southern region of Lebanon. We've also seen that at the exact same time, there has been reports of French air defense activity over the United Arab Emirates and other nations within the southern area of the Persian Gulf as they attempt to defend their allies. We've also been able to get some further news today out of the United Kingdom after the large developments and situations we saw yesterday with the armed showdown between Britain and Russia in the English Channel, and also the British announcement that 3 Russian attack submarines had penetrated their territorial waters, and not only that, were hovering above critical infrastructure and cableways under the water in a threat to possibly destroy them. The British government and armed forces have now stated today that they will be looking for and seeking to transition the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland into a wartime economy in preparation for a highly likely conflict that is most likely, if not inevitably, around the corner, at least according to British analysis at the moment. We've also been able to hear that inside the Guerrero state of Mexico, just south of Mexico City, it does appear that the Jalisco New Generation cartel is still active to some degree and is attempting to target Mexican National Guard and Mexican police forces throughout the area, still showing that the cartel war is still seeing some reverberations and tremors throughout central Mexico, where the Jalisco New Generation's cartel grip is incredibly strong. Further than that, we've also heard that the United States will be releasing 30 million barrels of crude oil out of the strategic oil reserves to be able to try and keep the gas prices here in the United States a little bit lower. And this also comes as news emerged today that U.S. WTI crude exports are skyrocketing as a large amount of countries, those in Europe, like we said, are having to resort to buying American oil, which is a little bit more expensive to transport and also a little bit more difficult to transport than that of Brent crude or other crude oil sources from the Middle East, meaning that we are seeing that U.S. internal gas prices and oil prices are directly being affected by the shortage inside of the Middle East, despite many claims that have stated the contrary. Further than that, we've also seen that Ukrainian armed forces have been landing major hits throughout the entirety of the Russian Don region over the course of the day, with significant explosions in Vladikavkaz, Tikhoretsk, a small city just southwest of Volgograd, and also oil rigs which have been attacked over the past 24 hours as well. The Ukrainian armed forces have been inflicting significant casualties onto the Russian army over the course of the past 24 hours as well, and have been stopping most if not all advances within this area. The European Union at large is unfortunately having to purchase a larger amount of Russian liquefied natural gas at this moment due to their inaccessibility of Middle Eastern liquefied natural gas, which is still stuck inside the Persian Gulf, and we've also heard that the Ukrainians will apparently be repairing the Druzhba pipeline to Hungary, Slovakia, and a couple of the other surrounding nations to see that Viktor Orban may relinquish his veto of the 90 billion euro loan that was supposed to be provided to Ukraine by the European Parliament and was voted upon unanimously, with the only veto being that of the Republic of Hungary. We've also even heard that within the Russian Federation's government, things are becoming a little bit more strenuous, as we've now seen that even internal Russian governmental sources and Russian media sources are stating that Vladimir Putin's approval rating is plummeting and has fallen from a whopping 75% approval rating down to 66%, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but in reality, if a Russian media company is saying that it's fallen that much, it's probably fallen a whole lot more, and there's probably hardly anyone left in the Russian Federation, at least in the common citizenry, that supports the Putin regime and their ongoing efforts with the war in Ukraine and their failed economic policies in the midst of the wartime scenario. But with that in mind, folks, also one more thing, folks, I forgot to mention, by the way, there is a elevated amount of military activity around the area of the Eastern Theater Command, which does appear to be suggesting to the Republic of China that the communist Chinese on the mainland may have some sort of a intention that they're working on at the moment. But with that, folks, it is time for us to get on into all of this news, starting with our largest stories first, and then working our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night. But if I'm not mistaken, Matthew is breaking the news right now. And Matthew, did you break it? And how is it broke?
Okay, so we are tracking some breaking news live right now as the stream is starting. Right now, we're seeing that the U.S. delegation, which is heading to negotiate with Iran, is currently passing over what appears to be Azerbaijan airspace. And currently, there are two VIP transport aircraft on the way, apparently to Pakistan from the looks of it. So, Enforcer, you can actually go real quick if you want to go take a look at Flight Radar 24. You can see those right there. There they are, in fact. That's the both of them right there. And they're currently making their way over to Pakistan. Now, they are going the long way. They're going the long route, obviously, for clear reasons to stay out of danger, but they are on the way, and that's currently their location.
And it does appear that apparently they had some sort of a layover briefly inside of Paris in France. A little bit interesting, isn't that? But outside of that, they did take off earlier from the United States of America, we believe from Andrews Air Force Base, and then made their way across the North Atlantic, landed in Paris for a quick layover and also refueling, and then they took back off and are now flying on their way to Islamabad in Pakistan, meaning that the American delegation in its entirety is soon to arrive, which we do believe includes the Vice President of the United States of America, who is apparently the head negotiator of the delegation that will be arriving there here within most likely the next several hours. Apparently, their estimated time of arrival, I would suppose local time, or at least our time, will be somewhere around 10:19 a.m., meaning that they'll be arriving most likely within the next few hours, and we may be able to see that they touch down while we are covering the news here on air. Additionally, just to give you all a little bit of an air overview of the entirety of the area, most of y'all can see the conga line that is still being formed by the large number of flights of C-17s and C-5 Galaxies within the larger area, with us also seeing a U.S. Navy PA Poseidon currently transiting over Saudi Arabia, and another C-17 flying out of the area. We can see our typical KC-135 rotations out of the Tel Aviv-Yafo International Airport, which has been incredibly common over the course of the war, as we've seen the largest amount of ADS-IB transponders activated on aircraft that have flown out of the Tel Aviv International Airport. We can also see...
And also, by the way, for everybody asking, those U.S. VIP transport aircraft, they almost certainly have fighter jet escorts with them. They are definitely not flying by themselves, so they have protection with them. They're not in the wide open or anything like that. And also, there are two aircraft. I'm not sure if they do the decoy strategy like they do with Air Force One. I'm not sure if they do that with the VIP aircraft. They might, because it looks like they're both identical for the most part, the two that are heading that way. So they do have protection, though. They're not just, out there, completely by themselves.
Certainly not. And we can see the two of them are currently in the air right now, and I would assume that the delegation probably isn't large enough to see that there is two aircraft that are needed to be loaded to full capacity to be able to bring over the delegation teams. So I would heavily assume that only one of them has the delegation on board. The rest might be security and other personnel that are not incredibly important, but still have to be transported over with the delegation team itself. They're also highly likely being provided some forms of escorts. However, there are some issues with that. Like, for example, the French Republic, from my understanding, has generally not allowed U.S. military flights or governmental flights through its airspace. This might be a special exception, so there may have been no escorts for these aircraft while they flew through the Republic of France's airspace and landed at Paris for a brief while to refuel, but we're not sure on that, and that's largely more so an assumption at this point. But moving us on out from that news and on into all of the news that we have been able to hear over the course of the past 24 hours, starting with our largest stories, which, interestingly enough, that one largely segues us into it perfectly, is that the United States and Iran are soon to be undergoing negotiations and diplomatic talks inside of Islamabad in Pakistan. We did get information just a few hours ago that it appeared that the Islamic Republic of Iran's diplomatic delegation team, including Abbas Arachi, which we can see right here, has arrived inside of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan and is apparently awaiting the arrival of the U.S. delegation, which is still on the way at this moment and will most likely be arriving here within the next few hours, probably while we're still on air. We do understand that at this moment, the Iranians are starting to play a lot more of a hardball on the negotiating side of things than they had before, and it also appears that they're even increasing their demands as the hours have passed leading up to these negotiations. For one, the Iranian government publicly has stated that they will only reopen the Strait of Hormuz after the war with the U.S. and Israel ends. This is very different than prior claims and the agreement that they had to create the alleged ceasefire, which is largely a collapse in everything but name, but we are still pretending here in the United States is in effect. When they agreed to that ceasefire, they actually agreed to open the Strait of Hormuz without conditions, meaning that the Strait of Hormuz would be open to civil traffic in the midst of a ceasefire, which, by the way, does not end the war. It's just a temporary cessation of shooting in the midst of the war, but shooting could start at any moment, and that would be a continuation of the very same war. Now the Iranians are claiming that they will only open the Strait of Hormuz after the war ends, meaning that they're now claiming that they will not accept anything rather than a peace treaty to open the Strait of Hormuz, meaning that they did enter the ceasefire under false pretext, and it was a diplomatic feint of a sort, because they never had an intention, an honest one at least, to open the Strait of Hormuz whatsoever. Not only that, the Iranian government officials inside of Tehran are making even broader and more, I guess you could say, audacious demands before the talks are to begin. MB Ghalibaf of the Iranian government stated this today. Two of the measures mutually agreed upon between the parties have yet to be implemented: a ceasefire in Lebanon and the release of Iran's blocked assets prior to the commencement of negotiations. These two matters must be fulfilled before negotiations begin. Apparently, at least according to MB Ghalibaf's claims, he's now stating not only does a ceasefire have to go in effect in Lebanon, and the Israelis have to stop their strikes there before the talks, which they've been insisting nonstop since that was still happening after the ceasefire supposedly went into effect, but they're now also adding that all of Iran's financial assets and assets of any type that have been blocked or frozen internationally must be released by the United States and its allies for negotiations to even commence. This is
that is insane. That's an insane claim. It's like, what if Iran is expecting like a goodwill gesture? And also, by the way, this is way beyond a goodwill gesture. This is basically going ahead and giving Iran what they want, basically, before the talks are even finalized, which is a crazy request to even make in the first place. But it's like, it's like the U.S. can't even do that, by the way. It's like we can't just relinquish all their stuff. We can't simply do that. It's not possible.
That is absolutely insane. And this has never been, by the way, folks, any clearly stated claim of the ceasefire by the Iranians or by our side until right now today, when Ghalibaf came out and made this statement for the Iranians that they now want all of their financial assets and assets of all types released before they even get into negotiations. This is showing us, folks, that the Iranians have no good faith going into these talks. We all knew that. All of y'all in the chat knew that. Telling y'all this is largely stating the obvious, and I'm not going to say that I'm trying to talk down to all of y'all and explain something that we all know is the case. But this is showing us that this is going to be going absolutely nowhere. And it already appears that the U.S. government, the vice president leading the delegation, and even the president of the United States have largely been making statements today that are already hedging their bets on the idea that nothing is going to be coming out of this at all. The vice president of the United States made a statement today before the aircraft headed out to Pakistan, that if they're going to try and play us, as in the Iranians, then they're going to find that the negotiating team is not that receptive. So this is already showing that, at least to some degree, the vice president of the United States has either been given information or he personally doesn't believe that the Iranians are going to be entering these negotiations in good faith, and they're going to be trying to pull a fast one on the United States of America, or just try and stall for additional time. We've also been able to hear that, at least according to the Pakistanis who piped up in the midst of all this today, a small side note, the Pakistani defense minister stated that Israel must be restrained for the U.S.-Iran ceasefire to survive. I'm not going to lie, that's actually kind of like on point, just to be completely frank. But outside of that, that was a smaller statement that came out in the midst of this whole diplomatic distrust and major development that's about to be happening here in a moment. That's largely going to determine whether this war ends in maybe a week or maybe never. So outside of that, we've then also been able to hear a couple of other important statements and developments that have happened over the course of the day as well, largely from the President of the United States. The President of the United States stated the following on Truth Social earlier today: "World's most powerful reset." 3 exclamation points, and that was it. We then heard an additional statement from the President of the United States that's given us a little bit more of an understanding of what was meant by this. As the President said, the results of the talks with Iran will be clear in about 24 hours, and we're going to know soon. The President also added, "We have a reset going," and then this explains what the reset is in exact terms. "We're loading up the ships with the best ammunition, even at a higher level than we use to do a complete decimation." So that was according to the statements of the President of the United States today when speaking with the press. This is giving
Wait a second. Wait a second. Here's a quick point right here. How can we load up bigger and better than ever with the best ammunition to go in for larger attacks than ever on Iran if they've already been decimated? Hey, what are we hitting at that point if they've already been decimated?
Well, also the thing is like, how in the world are we loading up the ships with the best ammunition? What are we saying, that we didn't provide our soldiers with the best equipment to start the war with? Like, we just provided them with dog
Man.
shit, and now we're giving them the good stuff? Like, what does this mean?
Yeah, I think the cookie cutter rhetoric didn't quite get the point across very accurately in that statement right there. There's a couple of little like rhetorical issues with that statement there, but I think we get the point. But the wording's a little off.
It's like, we're loading it up with the best ammunition. It's like, Mr. President, does that mean that we sent all of our guys into this war to fight and possibly die with shitty quality ammunition to start with? Well, you're an idiot. Like, you're fake news. But outside of that, largely beyond the grammatical errors here, and also just the logical errors in the statement, because also, by the way, folks, we did use our best quality munitions to start the war with, so I don't know what he's talking about. Either we're giving them something of comparable quality to what we had, or it's going to be worse quality this time around because we're running out of higher end munitions like the JASSM ERs and such. But those aren't a ship launch, those are air launch. But outside of that, it does appear that, at least according to the statements by the Vice President and the President, seems to me that they're both on the idea that these talks are going to amount to just about nothing, to be entirely frank with y'all. And we've also been able to see some more credible information that's certainly giving us an idea that the brakes aren't being put onto this war soon. U.S. officials have told the Wall Street Journal today that jets have recently arrived in the Middle East, and 1,500 to 2,000 troops, which is about the size of a brigade combat team, from the Army's 82nd Airborne Division could arrive in the coming days, as well as thousands of sailors and Marines that are on board the USS Tripoli, which I believe, yes, that one is already in the area, and then the USS Iwo Jima, which is, it's the USS Boxer, is still underway at this moment and will be arriving soon, bringing, if I'm not mistaken, the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit into the area. The 31st is already there on board the USS Tripoli. The USS George H.W. Bush carrier, strike group, and the 11th Marine Expeditionary are still on the way to the region. Oh, actually, I got that correct. I sadly just didn't read on there. We would have gotten that dead on the nail. Will likely take more than a week to arrive, for both of them at least. But we do understand that, at least for now, there is a significant force buildup that is still ongoing, and we're now hearing that, according to those White House officials that are privy to the matter, the Brigade Combat Team of the 82nd Airborne Division that's been awaited for its arrival is finally arriving at this moment right now. And that's giving us a really good understanding that if those forces are being moved in, and of course we have to go with the obvious idea, if you pull a hammer off of your tool belt, you intend on driving some kind of a nail into something. And if you're bringing in the 82nd Brigade Combat Team, or at least one of them, and you're bringing in a couple of Marine Expeditionary Units, then we're clearly going to be preparing for some sort of a military operation against the Islamic Republic of Iran, and that we believe that these talks are going to amount to just about nothing. And a lot of people are currently talking about that in the chat right now, and whether or not they believe that these talks are going to be failing. And I gotta say, folks, that I have never seen a poll this unanimous on something that we believe would kind of be a little bit up in the air. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so over the course of today and yesterday as well, and even the day before that, we've seen a massive U.S. Air Force airlift going from the United States to Europe and then jumping to the Middle East. And it's presumed that it's carrying brand new supplies for the U.S. military to get ready for brand new attacks on Iran. But now we're also hearing, very conveniently, that elements of the 82nd Airborne, about 1,500 to 2,000 of those airborne troops, are going to be arriving in just a couple of more days. The timing is very, very convenient here with the talks that are currently taking place right now. So now that the U.S. says it's loading up with weapons to restart attacks on Iran if the talks fail, what are the odds of failure of the talks? 81% said the talks will almost certainly fail, while 11% said both sides will talk to stall, and 4% said the talks might actually succeed. So I am certain at this point, without a doubt, that the United States is 100% talking to stall at this point. Because now that we're hearing that the 82nd Airborne is just a couple of days away, it's very obvious what the U.S. is trying to do here. And I think everybody's going to probably see that very shortly. The U.S. is trying to buy themselves some time with this talk. But here's the catch, though. We don't know what Iran's doing in the meantime. We've heard reports today that Iran could be rebuilding their ballistic missile program as we speak, and they're using the talks to stall to actually pull that that off. We're also hearing as well that it could be that Russia or other countries like China are trying to replenish Iran's stockpile so that way they can resume the war and defend themselves when the U.S. starts attacking again. So it seems like both sides are loading up. It seems like they're both loaded for bear at this point, and they're both stalling. Both sides know it's going to fail. Like it's at this point, it's very obvious it's going to fail, but they're both playing the waiting game. So I'm with the 12%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that I think I'm with the 80%. I think that these talks are about to fail, and I'm pretty sure that both sides are wanting to stall, and I'm sure the U.S. is wanting to stall to try and get more combat forces into the area, like the 11th MEU and the George H.W. Bush. But I'll be entirely honest with y'all, folks. I don't think these talks have an ability to go anywhere. The Iranians seem to be going into this with a maximalist approach from what we're seeing from their public statements. That means that they are going to force the United States to give them a yes or no answer on the spot right there. They're going to state the following. We want control over the Hormuz. We want to be able to charge excises on ships that pass through the area. We want all of our assets to be relinquished from their frozen states internationally. We also want to see that all economic sanctions are lifted against the Islamic Republic of Iran, and we also want to achieve these objectives as well. And then the U.S. negotiating team will go, well, that's really interesting. We'll have to think about that. And then the Iranians go, listen, this is the only chance. You'll either agree to this or not. And I have a feeling that that's probably how the Iranian delegation is about to go into this, because to be entirely frank with y'all right now, while they are, and I know a lot of people are going to be like, please, they don't have a military. Well, they still blockade the Hormuz, and that hasn't really been challenged or lifted yet. So they still have a significant amount of leverage just because of their control of the Hormuz. So for that reason, they're probably going to go in with maximalist demands and try and put significant pressure on the U.S. government. And if the U.S. government is just trying to buy time, they're still going to be forced to give an answer, and they're obviously not going to agree to maximalist terms, because we're most likely using this as a diplomatic feint to bring more forces into the area to start some other operation against Iran, and that means that we're going to have to tell them no, and then the Iranians are going to try and upset our timetable and start the conflict up again, whether we are ready or not with our force buildups to conduct future actions against them. So I would have to say, if that is how this goes here in a couple of hours, because these talks are going to be happening just a few hours after we go off air tonight probably, they're probably not going to go well, and this is probably going to end up collapsing. It might also be the case that the U.S. president may have told the vice president, who is the head of the delegation, to be maximalist as well on our end, and if that's the case, this talk will most likely end in less than 30 minutes, because the Iranians are going to put out their demands and say, it's this or nothing, and we're going to put out our demands, we're going to say, it's this or nothing. Neither side will be willing to even negotiate off of their talking points, and then everyone will get up and just walk away. I don't know if that's the case at the moment. We may actually be trying to stall for time, or we might not be trying to stall for time. Nevertheless, it does appear clear to me that this ceasefire is highly likely prone to failure instead of just a simple stalling tactic. I think we can all get the idea, folks. There is absolutely no way in hell that this is going to produce a meaningful peace treaty of any sort. Really, no one's of that belief. I mean, I've never really seen a poll that unanimous on something I thought a lot of people would kind of be up in the air on, and I would have to agree with all of y'all. It's just obviously clear. Nothing good's going to be coming out of this as far as ending the conflict. The only thing good that might come out of it is either prolonging our time to be able to build up our forces and create new war plans, or generally just figuring out where the Iranians are at right now and what kind of hand they think they have, and then starting the war basically tomorrow after these talks fail. So with that,
also, it's like what are they even expecting to talk about or negotiate? Because if Iran's already made extremely concrete statements that they're not going to let the Strait of Hormuz return to a pre-war scenario, which is the main crux of the issue right now. They've already ruled that out according to their top officials. So there's no room for negotiation there, according to the Iranians. Also, the Iranians are demanding that they keep their ballistic missile program. They're demanding that the U.S. withdraws from the region. I mean, these claims, these demands are extremely, extremely wild, and and Iran's not suggesting that they're willing to budge on it. They're simply just trying to have the U.S. show up and basically force them into the deal by threatening the United States. That's basically what they're trying to do here. So, Iran knows they got the leverage, so I don't think they're going to budge.
And I don't think they're going to be budging either, because regardless of what people want to say, the Iranians generally are the ones who have the largest hand on one or the other. And to say this again, and we say this basically every night, it doesn't really matter how many IRGC guys the U.S. Air Force is able to bomb dead, and it doesn't really matter how many military installations we're able to blow sky high in the interior of the Islamic Republic of Iran, as long as all of the forces that are closing the Hormuz are still intact and operational. they still have a significant amount of leverage on us. And to show you all the reason why that is the case, and also knock out some news here in the States, if anyone is ever saying still, which would be a significant fallacy, which we've covered a million times, that the U.S. is energy independent, and for that reason, nothing in the world, nothing in the Strait of Hormuz, and Europe's plight as far as their oil shortages concerns us, would be sorely mistaken. The reports have come out today for the exports of crude oil from the United States of America, and from March to April, there has been a humongous increase in the outflow of oil from the United States of America in export orders. According to what we've been able to hear, the number has risen from about 3.8 million barrels a day to nearly 5 million barrels a day on average throughout the month of March. And that's just leading us on into April. And as multiple countries around the world, especially those in Europe, start to run out of oil that they're not able to access and purchase from the Middle East or Russia, they are going to start turning to filling out their purchase orders here. That means that the amount of oil that is available in the United States day to day for companies to buy in the United States, refine, and then sell within the domestic market is decreasing, meaning that the supply is decreasing, but the demand stays stable. That leads to rising prices. This also means that in Europe, while they are finding some oil by this influx of increasing purchase orders on U.S. oil exports, they still aren't able to fill the gap over there, meaning that they will start to fill out more purchase orders. We will start to run out of a domestic supply of oil, and that will see both Europe and the United States economically suffer due to the overall lack of oil worldwide. That's an incredibly clear fact that everybody would know, and generally we're seeing that that is coming into effect right now. And so claims that some people in the U.S. government have made today, such as the Strait of Hormuz really doesn't affect us, is entirely false. The Strait of Hormuz does affect the United States of America because oil is not sold on a national market level. It is sold on a global market, meaning that prices are directly correlated, and if a country like France isn't able to buy oil from the Middle East, they're going to buy it from here. There's a lot less of it available at that point, and then we see that the prices are going to be rising for everyone across the board in the United States and also over there. And before some people say this, because I know some people are about to say this here in a moment, why don't we just ban oil being exported from the United States? Well, that would be a tremendously bad idea as well. And I just want to hit that one on the head really quickly because that is a humongous fallacy, much like many other people have been making a million of them about the oil industry over the past month. If we cut off oil exports to Europe, Europe is going to starve for oil. And if they starve for oil, they're going to economically collapse. They're going into a depression at a minimum at that point, maybe even a complete economic collapse because nothing is moving over there at that point. And if that is the case, the Europeans are tied to us at the hip, and we are tied to them at the hip economically. And when they go into a depression, they're pulling us down with them. If you want a good example of that, look at the Great Depression of 1929, which is probably the best example that we would have of an economic crash of that type. The economic crash that happened in the United States that created the Great Depression created even larger shockwaves to all of the European countries that were economically connected to us at the hip at that time. Unemployment rates in the United States reached somewhere around 25 to 30%. In countries that were affected by our Great Depression overseas, like Germany, the unemployment rate at its highest was reaching about 35 to 37% of all able-bodied males in the country. And Britain and France were in incredibly similar situations. And much like it happened then, an economic depression in the United States affecting Europe, an economic depression created by us blocking exports of oil to Europe would slingshot right back at us and cause an economic depression over here because of how heavily connected we are to the Europeans economically. That's why we have to consider whether Europe helps out or not, or whether the Middle East helps out or not. We have to open the Strait of Hormuz because if we don't, we are basically creating our own economic demise and the economic demise of our entire sphere of influence and our weakening of our grip of the sphere of influence worldwide. But
yeah, and I think they know. I think the U.S. knows, despite the rhetoric, that we have to get the Strait of Hormuz reopened because, like, over the last several weeks, we've been hearing flip-flopping galore from the United States about 1 minute they'll say, we don't need to open the Strait of Hormuz, it's Europe's problem. The next minute they'll say, Iran better open it or civilization's going to get wiped out. The next minute they'll say, well, the Strait of Hormuz is open, there's some ships going through. And then the next minute they'll say, well, actually, there's no ships going through, Iran better open it again. So between all of that, what I get out of it is the U.S. knows knows that we need to reopen it. They're not sure how to reopen it, and they're basically slinging poop at the wall and hoping that something sticks, basically. And so far, nothing has stuck. So, I think ultimately they're planning a military operation to open the strait, and the talks are simply a stalling tactic. So that way they can get the rest of these 82nd Airborne in there, they can get some more troops in, and also some more munitions to basically restock the interceptors inside the Gulf states. So that way when Iran starts attacking again, they aren't going to be basically fish in a barrel. So I think that's what they're up to, and I think the U.S. knows that. It's just frustrating in the meantime for everybody in the public because, if you follow the rhetoric very closely, it sounds like the U.S. is trying to neglect the strait. But in reality, though, if you look through the lines here a little bit, they know it needs to get open. It's just a bunch of crazy talk in the meantime.
Yeah, that is certainly true. And I would have to say that hopefully we'll be able to see the Strait of Hormuz reopened. But also to circle back to the reason why I was going through all of that analysis and discussion, that's why the Iranians are going to go into these talks with maximalist demands, because they understand that as long as their top officials that are alive right now are somehow able to dodge the bombs falling in Iran, and they are able to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed, they're generally fighting a war of attrition at this point, and this is the war that we're fighting right now. We're either going to see the U.S. opens the Strait of Hormuz before the West and us starts to suffer significant economic damage from that, or the Iranians are able to keep it closed long enough that we suffer significant economic damage to the point we basically have to back out of the war in a complete defeat to be able to see that by Iran's mercy, some oil tankers are allowed back out into the world and are able to try and at least stabilize the now collapsed economic situation that we would be in here. And that's the kind of war that we're fighting right now, and that's really where our priority should be, is breaking that blockade. Otherwise, we're in for a world of shit. But moving us on from that, it is time for us to get on into some more news that we were able to hear out of the Strait of Hormuz that is just turning this into an absolute picnic. A Russian tanker did go through today, by the way. Wanted to make sure to point that out. The Archimeda, which is a 2000-built, very large crude carrier, a VLCC, sailed westward through the conduit late on Thursday, ship tracking data showed. The vessel, which was unloaded, had indicated Iran's Karg Island, the Islamic Republic's main crude export hub, as its destination, before showing for orders. That phrase is often used to show a vessel has no clear instruction for its next call. Nevertheless, the vessel was able to make it through, and it is showing that the Iranians are giving some level of deference to the ships of their allied nations and the Axis powers, such as the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China, to be able to transit through the strait, even while the strait is largely closed for us. And if y'all thought, folks, I have to say, this is the icing on the cake today, folks. Now, some people in the chat, I've seen a few people in the chat that have been saying that we're just entirely wrong. The art of the deal is the way things work around here, and we have the greatest negotiator in charge of the U.S. government, and he'll be able to negotiate it into the war with Iran, and with it, the flood of ships will start sailing through the Strait of Hormuz. It'll be like a wave of steel filled with oil that will relieve the world economy. Well, I gotta tell y'all, folks, the Iranians have really thrown a monkey wrench in that one today, because they have stated that apparently they don't know where their own mines are at. And Iran
come on.
Oh, I know. This is a good one.
It's like, jeez, man. Like, what? The Iranians placed the mines in the strait. They know where they're at. Now, granted, they could float around a little bit. That's a problem that could happen. There are mines that are free floating for the large degree, but it's like they're the ones who dropped them. They know where they put them. I mean, come on. Like, I'm not buying that for a second.
But let me make sure to read this deal, because this is what U.S. officials are saying the Iranians have told them. Iran cannot currently open the Strait of Hormuz because it cannot find some of the mines it placed. That's the official claim that the Iranians are making. So if we entered so here's the thing, folks, that's hilarious about this. We entered a ceasefire with them where they said they opened the Strait of Hormuz. If we take that statement at face value, let's just assume it's true for this hypothetical scenario here. If it is true, that means they couldn't have even opened it because they don't even know where the mines are, and they were just basically telling everyone to go run into a death gauntlet, basically, if they tried to pass through. Then if they enter into a peace treaty, which they said they'd open the Strait of Hormuz over, if the war completely ends and is ratified through a peace treaty recognized under international law, they would then open the Strait of Hormuz. But then the problem with that, folks, is that if they open it, with what authority? The mines are still there if that statement is true, and the strait is still closed because we'd still have to go through and minesweep the thing and find the mines and destroy them. Now, a lot of people have been talking about this claim today because I got to be honest with y'all, folks. this is a real treat right here to hear a claim this ridiculous. I mean, this is a crazy one, and I think a lot of y'all are smelling a certain smell in the air, Matthew. What type of an animal does it come from? I think it comes from a bull, and it's bullshit.
Bullshit.
Matthew, what are people saying about it? How many people are saying it's bullshit, and how bullshit do you think it is as well?
Okay, so I think we have a herd of bulls, or possibly a pen full, whatever the term is for. We got a lot of bulls in one little small area right here, and that really reeks. It reeks when you get that many bulls in one spot like that. So right now we're hearing that Iran claims it cannot open the Strait of Hormuz right now because it simply can't find the mines. They forgot to turn on their little tracker systems to find out where they put these very deadly mines all over the world's most important strait. So what are your thoughts? 68% said the claim is 100% Iranian bullshit. 13% said that's not good. The situation sounds helpless and I believe the Iranians. 13% said it sounds possible, but I need some more information about this. So there is a solution, folks, to this. Now that the mines cannot be found, according to Iran, and you can't get through the Strait of Hormuz because you might hit a deadly mine, there is a solution. You have to go straight through Iran's toll booth. That's the solution. Now that seems a little bit sus. That seems a little bit suspicious that the only solution to the problem, because Iran can't find their mines, is to force everybody through their toll booth. Seems a little bit strange. I'm going to be with the 68%. That claim sounds like 100% Iranian BS, and I hope the U.S. didn't actually believe that, because I don't believe that for a second. And even if they couldn't find the mines, they could simply let the U.S. go in there and mine sweep and get them out of there. But I'm sure they're not acceptable on that either, would be my guess. So a little bit fascinating. The Iranians trying to pull a slick one here. But Enforcer, what say you?
I have to say, folks, this is the stupidest claim that I've ever heard. The way a minefield is always laid is that the mines are fired, and generally the coordinates of where the mines were laid is kept by some people somewhere that either fired those mines into the strait or dropped them there, so that way the Iranians, at a minimum, know where they are, so that way they might not send their own guys into a mine and get blown to hell. So generally, this is complete bullshit. They know where the mines are at because someone inside of the country somewhere had to be able to keep note of where they laid them. That would be like, this is absolutely stupid, folks. To let y'all know this, the largest amount of landmines that were ever laid in any conflict in world history was the Second World War. And most of them were laid by the Soviet Union and the Nazi Germans. And both of those sides, even laying the minefields they laid, knew where they were and were able to generally demine a large amount of them after the war because the records were kept well enough. So if two countries, like Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, in the middle of the deadliest war in human history, can keep track of tens of millions of mines that they lay, where they are, and where they were laid in those fields to be able to generally clear them, why in the hell would Iran not be capable of keeping track of about 12 of them that are floating around somewhere in the strait? That makes no sense at all, and someone would know where they are. They're bullshitting this outright. So I would have to tell y'all, this one ain't flying. That's a BS excuse to make it sound like, oh no, I guess they're all going to have to sail through Iranian territorial waters even after this whole thing's over, to where we basically get to run the whole show, pretty much.
It's like has the U.S. bothered to ask Iran and say, oh, you can't find your mines? Well, we're willing to help you. We'll just send in our Navy ships that are minesweepers. We'll send them in and go find them for you. What do you think the Iranians are going to say to that? Do you think the Iranians are going to be like, oh, absolutely, bring in your minesweepers and come get the mines out that we lost? They're going to say, well, actually, we don't want U.S. minesweepers in here, actually. And it's really funny why that would be the case, because it's almost like Iran doesn't want people to find the mines. It seems like that's probably the reason.
It really does seem like that. It really does seem like that would be the reason. They're trying to keep control of this whole situation, and they're trying to rig some way, folks, that no matter what, they're still able to generally get the ball in their park to where they still run the strait with an iron fist, even after we create a peace treaty with them. That's why we know that this talk in Islamabad's never turning into anything, because these sorts of bad faith actions are obvious, and if anyone's looking at it with a level reasonable head that has any knowledge in it, then they would generally know that that is certainly going to be the case, and there's no reason to even consider these talks to be serious. But anyways, we've also been able to hear some other major developments out of the region today. But before we get on into those developments, I do want to bring you all up to the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland over the news that they got from today out of London. we've been able to hear that this country here, which is a United Kingdom, folks, of Great Britain, which includes Scotland, England, and Wales, and Northern Ireland, which is this little piece over here, has made a statement today out of the British Ministry of Defence. The British Ministry of Defence building is actually right here. It is this larger building just about a block away from the Parliament building, and it's also not that far away from Downing Street, which is right here, and also a short-term residence of the royal family, which is Buckingham Palace here, although the royal family largely stays in Windsor Castle. Just a little minor details, folks, to remind you all of how the British government functions and how close they all are to each other as far as their operational distance. As far as the Parliament, the Prime Minister, and the military is concerned, they're basically quite literally all on the same street, which is Whitehall. But outside of that, we were able to hear. Oh, heavens, did our OBS just disconnect? What's going on here?
Oh, dear. Oh, dear. I think we're back, though.
We are back. That's weird. I don't know what went on with that, folks. Massive apologies to everyone there. But outside of that, it does appear that the British government is stating that they are getting ready to start new mobilization plans and to possibly shift into a wartime economy. Wartime economies are heavily restrictive in terms of what they're capable of doing and generally the quality of life for the general citizenry. Wartime economies are usually only entered when war seems to be an inevitable certainty or war has already started. Generally, this shifts most of a nation's industrial base into the production of wartime materials, with consumer goods being produced at an incredibly limited or almost non-existent level. This also means that the quality of life for the average citizen in the country significantly decreases, and rationing in most every facet comes into play as well to be able to make sure to conserve the small remaining resources that they have on the home front. Most of their efforts would be diverted towards supporting the British military and making sure that they can put their best fighting foot forward once a conflict begins. These statements only come a day after the United Kingdom's Ministry of Defense announced that 3 Russian attack submarines had entered their territorial waters and that they had also gotten down into an armed an armed standoff, the best way to explain it, in the English Channel with the Russian Navy. A lot of people are currently talking about this situation at the moment and are starting to wonder what in the world is going to be going on with this. But it actually appears that we've gotten another poll at the moment. I was just setting this whole thing up, folks, for one poll, and I'm seeing that it's another one. So moving us back down.
We'll do it. We'll do this instead. We won't necessarily run a poll on that one. I had one queued up, but it didn't really get timed really well with the current poll I was running for the most part, mainly because I was trying to get his third poll in, and it kind of just didn't line up with the news the way it was going. But real quick, though, I will say this. I see a lot of people talking about this in the chat. It seems like the British are trying to do this as a way to basically show their muscles a little bit. They're trying to make it seem like they're ready to go, because now that they're feeling intimidated, because now they got the Russians with their submarines right off their coast, they got the Russians standing down British naval vessels. They're trying to do something to make it very clear that they're not going to simply back down and be steamrolled by foreign powers. So that's probably what they're doing. They're simply trying to make sure they're warding people off, which is a wise move to take. But generally, though, they already had a war plan that they had ready to go, but apparently they're revamping it to be even more extreme because they're getting concerned about recent developments. It seems like what they're trying to do.
And it largely does seem that that is the case today. But moving us on back down to the Strait of Hormuz, we were able to hear that a lot of people are talking about the U.S. giving at least 3 different...
Is there an internet issue or something?
No, the internet over here is perfectly fine. It seems like it might be a server issue on YouTube's end, or OBS is having a slight issue. But go ahead, Matthew. Go ahead, please. Tell us what those 3 different narratives are. And also a big apologies to everyone for the technical difficulties. Sadly, that appears to be out of my control at the moment because my internet's connected at the best level it can be, and it also appears that OBS is working fine as well. It might be a YouTube server end or an OBS server end issue at this point. But anyways, Matthew, what do we got?
And yes, indeed, apologies for the issues, by the way. It's concerning to say the least. But real quick, though, jumping off the whole lag thing, since it appears to be fixed itself, for at least for right now, we are seeing that today the U.S. gave at least 3 different narratives for reopening the Strait of Hormuz today. So what is the truth out of all these different narratives? And it looks like 54% said the U.S. will force the Strait of Hormuz open, probably militarily. 31% said the strait cannot be reopened, and 5% said Iran will reopen it in new talks through negotiations. So right now, like I sort of went over earlier, we've heard from the United States. They said earlier today, they said it's really not our problem. It'll reopen automatically, and if it doesn't, then it's Europe's problem anyway. Then they said at one point, they said Iran better open it, or else we're going to start hitting Iran harder than ever. And then they said at a different point, the Strait of Hormuz is actually open, and there's ships going through, and everybody else is lying that's saying it's not open. So they're saying literally everything. They're covering literally every possible option that you could have for a narrative, and they all can't be true. So clearly, two of the three are lies, and one of them is actually true. So I guess they're playing a game of, two truths and a lie, or two lies and a truth. We're playing like kidsy games out here now about when the strait's going to reopen. But I would say I'm with the 54%. The only way to get the Strait of Hormuz open at this point is a military operation. But there is a catch to it. Like we've discussed before, a ground operation is extremely risky. You send in troops on the ground in like a Hormuz Island or something like that, you're going to be dealing with drone threats galore, and troops are probably going to get hurt or even killed in the process. So unless we have a way to deal with that threat properly and, set up enough air assets to keep the Marines safe on the ground when they do a raid on one of these Iranian islands, then it might be doomed from the start. Alternatively, they could keep trying to strike the coastal missile launchers. They could try that as well. But there's also another problem with that. The Iranians thought about that, and they built hardened underground shelters. So that way these launchers don't get hit when the U.S. comes in to strike them. So that's another problem as well. So it's an extremely difficult problem, as we've discussed at length over the last couple of weeks, a very difficult problem. But the only way forward is military action. The Iranians are not going to reopen it. And also, we got to do something to get it open because it's very important to global economic issues. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to be with the 54%. The U.S. will have to militarily reopen the Strait of Hormuz. I know. That for some reason gets people in the White House incredibly scared. We can't bomb Tehran again? And no, you can't. You got to go open the Strait of Hormuz. Because let me tell you something, folks. Like, we can bomb Tehran for the 900th time and achieve nothing by doing that. We have to fight the war in a way that it's achieving something for us on a strategic level. Like blowing up the biggest bridge in Iran and then the biggest power plant in Iran and then a whole bunch of other biggest things in Iran isn't really doing us a lot but making good truth socials because we get to claim that the biggest and the best bombs blew up the biggest and the best things in Iran. But the reality of it is that we need the biggest and the best strait, the Strait of Hormuz, to get opened for the biggest and the best oil ships to bring the biggest and the best and the greatest oil through the Strait of Hormuz, so that way the biggest and the greatest economies in the world can stay stable and not run into the biggest and worst problems that have ever been seen. So I would generally say that that's our issue right now. We just need to go down there and open the thing. And I know that that's going to be a little bit easier said than done, but the military will just have to find a way to forcibly reopen the thing because otherwise we're kind of screwed.
Yeah, and also they have to get it open for another reason as well. For number one, they got to get it open to avert a total global disaster economically. They have to do that because it's going to affect literally every country on the planet. Number two, they have to get it reopened because right now it's basically giving Russia the funding they need to keep the war going. Ukraine has taken out about 50+% of Russia's export capabilities for their oil, but that's still not enough to hamper Russia, enough to cut their economy in half. It's just simply not enough. So Ukraine's doing their part to hurt the Russians to where they can't get the oil out. But the U.S. has to do their part now, and they have to get this strait reopened because when the strait gets reopened, Russia is going to be once again robbed of their oil income because once again the oil is flowing, and we're basically letting our enemies get funded right now by letting the strait stay closed. It's giving Iran a huge ticket to success. It's giving the Russians a massive ticket to success, and it's just hurting everybody. Because I heard today that Europe is starting to really buy a lot more Russian natural gas because they can't get it from the Middle East. So, I mean, there's more money flowing straight into Putin's pocket right there, and we can't allow that to continue either. So it's for several reasons. I mean, it's obvious at this point. We have to get the strait open.
I would have to definitely agree. And I saw a couple of people, folks, in the chat, and I'm actually going to take a minute to address this one again. Ask the question, why in the world do we need to go with the Strait of Hormuz when the U.S. doesn't get oil from the Middle East, everyone else does? I'm going to say this up front. If you really want to know why, there's a great real-life lore video that was made like 5 years ago that is about an hour long, and it explains this in extremely great detail, what would happen, which is exactly what we're seeing right now, if the Strait of Hormuz was closed by Iran. So I'm going to preface that entirely by just giving a huge shout out to Real Life Lore, who we respect greatly, makes great videos and incredible documentaries because he explains it in an expert documentary. But for me to explain it here really quickly for everyone, the oil markets are not regional. They are globalized. As a matter of fact, the entire economy is globalized these days. There's really no such thing as anything working off of a national economic model these days. Everything works off of a globalized one, meaning that in effect, in one area of the world will affect us. Just because we don't get oil out of the Middle East doesn't mean that that doesn't affect us, because the Europeans buy it. And for that reason, if they can't get it, they've got to buy oil to keep running from somewhere else. They buy it from us. We start running out of oil. The price rises over here, and we run into shortages, and Europe is as well, just to try and get by. So I hope that explains that to people the best I can in the quickest way possible, because, you know, I hate to say it, folks, but if people aren't getting it at this point, I'm not going to explain it again. Because it's a fairly straightforward thing. We've talked about this for like 5 weeks.
Yeah, everybody gets it by now. Like everybody that's like trying to like look at the situation objectively, they understand why. I think the people questioning at this point are people that's just trying to troll. Because you can't get any more simple than it is right now. I mean, we're funding our enemies. The global economy relies on the oil prices coming down. I mean, everybody's got to get that. That's literally can't be any less simple.
Yeah, I would generally have to say so. And also, oh man, now people are like, globalist economies are destroying. Honestly, it's like if y'all didn't have a globalized economy, a lot of y'all wouldn't be living the life y'all have right now. It's just the natural ebb and flow of things. We went from micro regional economies in the medieval ages to now we work on a globalized economy. As technology advances, the distance at which we are able to trade resources increases. That means that the availability of goods increases. That means that costs generally increase for the quality of those goods, and that generally sees an increase in quality of life. Whether people like it or not, I gotta tell you all the truth of it, the world is in a globalist economy and has been for decades, and that's never going to change. Any sort of an attempt to quote-unquote bring back the good old days of having made in America and sold in America is never going to happen for any country in the world, for that matter, even if it's Britain, made in Britain, used in Britain, because it's just not economically viable anymore in the day and age that we live in. That's just the reality of it. And so we have to work with the cards we were dealt with, and we have to work in the era we're living in, instead of trying to pretend like we can force ourselves to live in the eras of yesteryear when that would have been possible and it's no longer possible. But anyways, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what I would know. But before we move on into the rest of our news in the Middle East, I do want to take quick pause for a moment to thank all of y'all for watching tonight. YouTube has been having some slight reporting issues tonight for viewership, which we were noting at the beginning of the stream, but it looks like we have a pretty decent, rough approximation of how many of y'all have been here so far. At the peak tonight, we had about 24,000 people here, and over the course of about the first hour, 117,000 people have watched this channel. And I've got to say that we are entirely honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many people consider this channel to be their primary source of news, and we hope that we've been doing y'all a good service tonight in providing the news and analysis to go with it, to be able to give a greater idea and a bigger picture of what's going on in the world. Before we move on into the rest of the news from the Middle East, East Asia, Mexico, and also Europe, I do want to make sure that we take a brief pause to be able to address 3 questions from the chat to give y'all a huge thanks for watching so far before we move on into the rest of the major news. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, and also real quick, I did get some more breaking news right now. They're lagging like a fiend tonight. I tell you what, like a fiend.
I gotta tell you, I don't think there's anything we can do about this one tonight because my internet is literally running perfectly fine. I've been checking on the side, on the second screen. It's working fine. This is some sort of a server issue for OBS or YouTube, so we'll just have to press through it. But go on ahead with the breaking news once again.
So we have some breaking news. In the meantime, folks, bear with us. Also, by the way, I don't know what's going on with YouTube either. It's like that we dropped down to 17,000 people, then we jump back up to 20,000. It's like we're not losing people and gaining them that fast. There's something strange going on with all that. Look at it, it's still going wild. It's like jumping around like the freaking like debt clock or something like that. That's crazy work. But back to the breaking news, though. There's been allegations that the Federal Reserve has allegedly begun asking U.S. banks for details about their exposure to private credit following a surge in redemptions from the funds and a rise in troubled loans in the industry. So I mean, that's a little bit concerning to hear that. It sounds like the Federal Reserve might be getting a little bit worried that maybe the banks are overexposed in their private credit lines or something. Maybe people are not paying their credit cards off, possibly, or something like that. Sounds a little bit concerning to say the least. So, a little bit of economic trouble possibly on the horizon if that report right there is accurate. So, we'll just have to see. But, Enforcer, what say you?
And I'd have to say that it's a fairly concerning sort of a development because if this is true, they might be seeing that some sort of economic calamities might be coming here in the future if we take this allegation or this claim to be factual. So I hope that does address that the best we can, at least at the moment, as far as the breaking news coming out. And in the meantime, we also have an update on the U.S. delegation that's flying to Islamabad. They appear to be somewhere over Turkmenistan at the moment, and they're starting to get fairly close to Pakistan. Also, crazily enough, folks, I just realized they're going to fly through Afghanistan to get there. Does that mean that the Taliban gave them technical diplomatic permissions to get there?
Yeah, I mean, why would they fly through there, though? I mean, they're at war with Pakistan.
Yeah,
They're not going to fly through Afghanistan. There's no way.
That's the only way they can do it. Either that or they have to fly all the way through China to get there, and then through India, and then over the line of contact between Pakistan and India.
I think they're going around. There's no way they're going through Afghanistan.
I mean, I don't know. We're going to keep an eye on these flights, folks, because I don't know what the hell they're about to do. They might actually fly straight through Afghanistan. And if they do, that is going to be absolutely insane. I won't believe that until I see it. So with that in mind, interesting development to say the least. I don't even really know where to go with that one because I just realized that. But it's time for us to get on into the questions. Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first three super chats and getting right back to our breaking news, we do have a $100 support from none other than Ukraine EN7D. And thank you very much, Ukraine, for that $100 support. And we do appreciate that very, very much. That's very generous of you. You said, love you guys, but you need to watch Winter on Fire.
And a humongous thanks for your support, Ukraine EN7D. And I will have to say, I'm definitely trying to get into watching movies these days, and Winter on Fire is probably a very interesting documentary. Probably one certainly worth watching, because 2,000 Meters to Avdiivka was a wildly interesting documentary, and an incredibly sad one as well. Very tragic and bittersweet one in a sense, because they did finally take Avdiivka, but with significant losses. But I would have to say Winter on Fire would be a very interesting one to watch as well, and we'll eventually have to try and watch it. It's just that finding the time is a little bit tough, and also these days I'm trying to get on one of those fitness crazes, folks, and get a little bit more in shape. So for that reason, it's really hard to find the time to, be able to watch documentaries and movies and such, even as much as I would like to watch them. But a humongous thanks to you once again for that incredible support, Ukraine EN7D, because folks like you help this channel to keep on running and make this thing possible. If it wasn't for direct viewer support and super chats, super thanks, super stickers, and not only that, Patreon support, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running each and every day. While we never run ads or sponsors on our live streams, our super chatters are largely our sponsors through crowdfunding and are able to keep this show running. And we've got to thank y'all massively for that support, because if it wasn't for folks, amazing folks like y'all who went out of your way to support the channel when you don't have to, this thing wouldn't be possible for us or anybody watching right now. So big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, moving into our next super chat right here, this one is going to go to Peteski. And thank you very much, Peteski, for that $50 support. And we do appreciate that very, very much. He said, is a land invasion inevitable if talks continue to fail? And how hard would it be tactically and logistically to secure the Strait using ground forces, air and water assets? And is it even possible without mass casualties to ground forces and LSA?
I would say I think it's getting a lot more likely because we are seeing that a single brigade combat team of the 82nd Airborne Division has been brought into the Middle East. And not only that, we are hearing that additionally, the 11th MEU, which is on board the USS Boxer, is expected to arrive here soon. So I would say that it's decently likely that a ground invasion may be coming here in the near future, but I have a feeling that we're probably going to be seeing more extended air operations against Iran because the prevailing, and I got to say, folks, this is a fallacy of the last several years. The modern belief inside of the United States is that sometimes we can win wars just by air power alone. And that's been proven to be incorrect every single time that's been attempted in recent years while we've been covering the news here. Both the current administration and the last one tried major airstrike campaigns on the Houthis to no avail. Both of them completely failed. They didn't destroy the Houthis. The Houthis are still there. And while they did take some losses, they still control Western Yemen with an iron fist. And we've also seen that the airstrike operations in Iran have not reopened the Strait of Hormuz, at least yet. Ground operations may be necessary. And generally, I have to say this, folks, in a way that's just honest here. Losses are going to happen if a ground invasion is conducted by the United States, even if it's a limited one just along the coastline. But here's the thing. I'm just going to have to say this the way it is. That is war, but that is also the cost of war due to incredibly poor strategic planning. But at this point, our hand is forced that we have to take that action. Otherwise, things are going to get worse for all 360 million people in this country and the hundreds of millions, if not over a billion, that are a part of our sphere of influence and alliances worldwide. And that largely is what this boils down to. If you don't like the idea of U.S. ground forces having to land, I mean, I would completely agree with you, but we really have no choice. At least at this point, because of all the poor decisions and planning that we've done at the governmental level leading to this situation. So if the losses are pretty significant, there's a certain, group of people that you could certainly blame for us getting in such a bad position to where this became a necessary action that we had to take. But regardless
But the catch is, though, for me at least, about the whole casualty situation. Casualties are a part of war, but the fear I have, though, is now that the U.S. is going into a situation and they're walking into a brand new type of warfare, which is drone warfare. The U.S. military and the ground forces have never had to contend with that. Previously, when we've had large casualties, like in World War II and things like that, we generally knew the threat they were going up against, and it was generally a level playing field for the most part. Everybody had machine guns, they had artillery, we knew what we were working with. But in this case, though, the drone situation is brand new, and also it's extremely deadly, and there's no good defenses against it right now for the U.S. forces. So we're going in unprepared, and we're going into a very concentrated little island right off the coast of Iran. Like if we go invade the Hormuz Strait Islands, Hormuz, or like any like Karga Island or anything like that, it's a very confined space, and we're already at a disadvantage because the drones are something we haven't dealt with before. So I fear the casualties are going to be very high because of that. And until we have a proper drone defense, there's no way to really, stave that off.
I would say that is certainly true, and that's also something that I wasn't really going to touch on a whole lot because that makes the situation rather grim. But Matthew is correct with that. But I have to expound a little bit further, folks, because I see some people are a little bit confused with what I was saying, and I don't think I explained it incredibly well. So let me give it another shot here, explain a little bit more in depth, and be a little bit more particular with the wordage, and I think this will get across to a lot more people. The U.S. messed up with its original war planning because from what we know, because the president said this himself, he expected the war to only last 3 days and that the Iranian government was going to completely collapse after Khamenei was killed. So nobody did any planning beyond those first 3 days, except for where the U.S. is going to kill Khamenei, and then we're going to wait to see what happens afterwards because we're expecting, 99% chance the government will collapse. So instead of planning like the military normally would, which is off the worst case scenario that Khamenei gets killed and then the war keeps going, which is what most military planners would have done, we just planned Khamenei dies and then the government collapses and that'll be it. And we didn't plan any extigent plans or contingency plans or anything like that if that was not to be the case. So once Khamenei died and nothing really changed and they just went to war with us and blockaded the Hormuz, the whole thing went to shit. So generally, that's why we're having to talk right now about putting a whole bunch of U.S. Marines, certainly, and also soldiers of the U.S. Army in harm's way, is because the military planning was absolutely screwed literally at the first hour of the war. And that's really what I'm trying to get at here, because regardless of whether or not people like the idea of putting the Marines and the element of the 82nd Division on the ground where they will probably face significant losses, the unfortunate reality is that we now have to take that action because the war planning has been screwed up so badly. This might be the only way to turn the situation around, even if it does end up taking significant losses. And if you don't like that, which I got to be honest with y'all, I don't really like that, because I know a lot of people who are currently serving in the armed forces, and I believe that it's the responsibility of the U.S. government and its leadership to look out for the safety of its soldiers as much as possible, and to try and always pursue war plans and strive for perfection in this sense, to mitigate and minimize casualties and fatalities to the extreme, if possible. This certainly is going against that because of the poor planning that was started at the beginning of the war, and if you don't like that, then you have to blame the people who planned the war, or largely had the largest say or their finger in the pie on how this thing went in the opening days, because that's where the responsibility and the fault lies if those soldiers have to land on those beaches because of how badly it's been screwed up so far, and then if they take heavy losses as a result, because we have to now take this very tragic but necessary action to try and secure our national interest and to turn the strategic situation around in this war.
Yeah, it's just a bad situation. There's really just not really much to say about it. I don't see the situation going very positive. The U.S. might succeed in the end, but it's like, at what cost are we going to succeed in the end? It's like, are we going to lose thousands of guys in the situation? And then, it's going to be obviously not only a tragic, but it's also going to be a major embarrassment for the United States as well. But at the end of the day, we might get the Strait of Hormuz reopened. But that's the catch, though. Even if we go in and take an island, that does not guarantee that the Strait of Hormuz is going to be reopened. That doesn't guarantee that. It's just simply a first step to try to reopen the strait. So, I mean, it's a deep pit. Like, it's a deep pit we're in right here. Not trying to sound like a doomer because I don't want to sound, completely negative here. But it's just a lot of, snares that are basically in the way to get this thing reopened. But hopefully they're doing some good planning this time around, and maybe it'll go smoother.
Yeah, hopefully so. But with that, I hope that does address that at least the best I can, in my opinion. And hopefully Matthew addressed that as best as you could in his opinion as well. And a big thanks to you for support, Pateski, and helping this channel to keep it running. And I hope we answer your question incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the final question of this segment. And then we're going to be moving on to the rest of the news that we have in the Middle East and around the world.
All right, so the last super chat of this segment right here is going to go to none other than Marion Deemert. And thank you very much, Marion, for that very generous $50 support, and we appreciate that support as well. And Marion said, Winter on Fire is a must-see movie. It makes the Battle of the Ukrainians more important.
And apparently that's a really good one, because you're actually the second person, literally out of 3 super chats, you're the second super chat so far to bring up that movie. And we're going to have to certainly give it a watch, because it sounds like a good one. It sounds like an incredibly important one to watch, and apparently a very powerful message inside of it. And I got to say that 2,000 Meters to Avdiivka was a very sombering documentary, and I'm sure that the Winter of Fire is probably an incredibly interesting one as well. And so humongous thanks to you for that incredible support, Marion Deemert, and helping this channel to keep on running. We'll make sure to keep that in mind. And also, we have a whole load of Ukraine war news to go over tonight as well. So kind of a convenient timing that everyone's talking about Winter of Fire, because we're about to be getting on into the spring of hell that is happening up there at the moment for the Russians here later on tonight. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. And moving us on out of this question segment, we are now going to be moving on into the rest of the news that we got out of the Middle East. We were able to see that within the area of the United Arab Emirates, the French military at large, including their helicopters of the army and the Rafales of the air and space forces, were able to shoot down a significant number of Iranian drones that were attempting to head towards the United Arab Emirates, as it does appear that the French have been involved in defensive air operations around this area.
Oh, wow, look at that. They just like lobbed a couple of them fireballs on that thing. Look at that.
Honestly, the French are pretty wild sort of a fighting force. Not a lot of people give them a great deal of credit, but they have some very advanced home-built weapon systems, and we can see that they're using them to great effect out here.
You know what those actually are? They're flaming baguettes. Look at that thing.
Oh, Lamasu. But anyways, moving on from that and over to Qatar, we also were able to hear that, unfortunately, imagery came out today of the damage to the AN/FPS-132 ballistic missile early warning radar in Qatar, which we had already known by satellite photography within the first few days had been hit and damaged to some extent by Iranian fire. We can see that this structure does appear to have taken some pretty decent damage, which means that ballistic missile early warning radars and capabilities within this area have been greatly degraded, as I believe this was the only system of its type in the entirety of the Middle East within that area. We've also seen that as well, the Kingdom of Kuwait has reported that they did come under Iranian drone attacks today, and this issued statement was given by the Ministry of Defense, Brigadier General Saud Abdulaziz Al-Otaibi, which is a very hard name to pronounce, today. The armed forces monitored and dealt with 7 hostile drones within Kuwaiti airspace during the past 24 hours, and they were handled in accordance with established procedures. The Iranian aggression resulted in targeting several vital facilities affiliated with the National Guard, leading to injuries among some of its members who are currently receiving treatment with stable conditions, in addition to significant material damage. Additionally, the Inspection and Disposal Group of the Land Force Engineering dealt with 14 reports in accordance with established procedures. Members of the armed forces continue to perform their national duty with high morale and steadfast discipline, embodying their unwavering commitment to protecting the homeland, preserving its security and stability, and affirming their ongoing readiness to execute missions and duties with utmost efficiency. This statement, in large, has confirmed that the Kuwaitis did come under attack again today, which is a clear violation of the ceasefire. Did the U.S. respond to that? No. Outside of that, though, we did get to see that inside of Israel, it does appear that the Israelis have been asked to stop. The Lebanese government and the current administration of the United States have asked Israel for a pause in its attacks against Hezbollah before direct negotiations between Israel and Lebanon begin next week. We have a feeling that that's probably not going to be listened to because, the Israelis do their own thing. We've also been able to hear that there was a rocket attack that happened within northern Israel today, as air alerts did sound directly across the border, and we have seen that Israeli airstrikes did continue over the course of the day, with some airstrikes in the Nabatea area near to the Litani River inside of southern Lebanon, in this clip right here.
Oh, geez, they're really laying it heavy inside of Lebanon.
Man, I gotta say, man, they really are laying it down. We also get to see a Merkava firing a shell into a Lebanese village in this clip as well. And there's the shot. There's the shell. And there was the hit down there somewhere in that village. That's the end of those clips, but still showing us that the Israelis are continuing military actions inside of Lebanon, on the ground, and also in the air as well. Moving us on out of the area of the State of Israel, we've also seen that there was a significant and elevated amount of U.S. air activity around the area of Baghdad over the course of the day, with an MQ-9 Reaper spotted over the area. We also were able to see additional reports as well, showing U.S. helicopters, including Blackhawks that were carrying aerial drop tanks right here. And also another clip in a moment that showed a F-16 over Baghdad as well. And here's the clip showing the F-16. That's the end of those clips, but it's still giving us an indication, at least for now, that the United States Armed Forces are still moving significantly around Baghdad, which is quite close to the Iranian border. Now it's time for us to get on into the meat of the developments that happened within Iran today, as according to U.S. intelligence, they have assessed that Iran still has thousands of ballistic missiles and could redeploy launchers from underground storage, despite the recent strikes, according to the Wall Street Journal. Additionally, we were able to hear that down in the area of the Pakistani-Iranian border, at least within their waters, the Pakistani Navy stated that they conducted a successful search and rescue operation in the North Arabian Sea, rescuing 18 crew members of the MV Gold Autumn after a distress call. Nationals of China, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Vietnam and Indonesia were safely recovered from the vessel that apparently was possibly stricken by Iranian fire today. Now that we've gotten all of this Middle Eastern news out of the way, and hopefully we'll never hear about this again, we'll be covering it tomorrow, we're going to get a quick update on where the delegation is at this moment right now. Ah, yes, they are still at this moment over Turkmenistan. And it appears...
What's that plane going straight for them? What's that plane?
That's a Pakistani IL-78.
Interesting. Why would they be sending that out?
Oh, just to make sure that, they're checking their papers and all that before they come in. They're just making sure that they're allowed in and all. I'm sure it's something completely normal. What's this?
Is that a Russian special squadron flight?
Yes, and it took off from somewhere in Syria, from what it appears.
What are they doing there inside of Syria? That wouldn't be, possibly giving weapons to proxy forces or something, would it?
Oh, heavens. God forbid if they ever did something like that. Great heavens. Also, what's going on now? Okay, so that's just a normal U.S. flight. That was a British flight from RAF Akrotiri. And then most of the air activity out here is kind of still stable. So that's rather interesting developments going on down there. Anyways, Moving us on finally out of the Middle East, we're now going to be moving on over, man, to get that Taiwan poll ready, to East Asia, as we have been able to hear of a significant development that happened today in the area of the Strait of Taiwan. According to a statement, Taiwanese security officials have stated that China has surged nearly 100 naval and coast guard vessels across the East and South China Seas this week, well above the usual 50 to 60, calling the buildup very rare for this period. Other officials say the expanded presence may now be the new normal. The People's Republic of China heavily emphasizes within their armed forces, the People's Liberation Army, the idea of non-war military activities, or as they abbreviate it, NWMA. This is a concept of fighting the enemy without fighting them by getting inside their minds and basically defeating them mentally. This means that the Chinese love to conduct an action that is called low-level coercion, which is one of the three main ways that they try and conduct coercive actions against countries to be able to try and get them to agree with what they want. Out of those three, the other two of the three that isn't low-level coercion, there is united front and there's also diplomatic efforts with the target state. So the Communist Chinese try and conduct three of the following principles against Taiwan. One of them is to engage in direct diplomacy with Taiwan and try and encourage them directly to reunite with China in a I think it's like a two government, one state solution. Then the other option is to create a united front. China goes around the world and has greatly succeeded in this regard in encouraging countries to say that Taiwan is not a sovereign nation and the Communist Chinese, which are the Chinese Communist Party and the People's Republic of China, are the legitimate and only China, largely delegitimizing the island of Taiwan and its government and also further bolstering China's position as an international powerhouse and a diplomatic player. The third option that they conduct, which is the low-level coercion efforts, which are the ones we cover the most on the channel, are the ones that largely regard larger military actions and movements around Taiwan to make the Taiwanese government think that it might be a hopeless fight if they were to ever get into a war with the Communist Chinese. I mean, it does appear that they are ramping up these efforts significantly around the area of Taiwan in an effort to try and put even more pressure on the Taiwanese government to accept China's diplomatic efforts in accepting a one-state, two-solution system of government, a lot like they did with Hong Kong until they crushed them in 2019 and basically turned them into another Chinese province with some special tax laws. But outside of that, a lot of people are talking about what's going to be happening next. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this? And what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so Taiwan is reporting a very odd and also unusually large Chinese military presence near their island over the past week, and also it's still increasing today. And also, we're seeing China really start to wage a political war against Taiwan, and they're ramping that up a lot. So, what happens next? 38% said China will likely still invade Taiwan soon, and that could come at any time. 29% said China is now focusing almost solely on coercion, and 27% said it's all merely intimidation, and that's all it'll ever be. And it seems to be that China probably still has invasion plans, but they are definitely starting to ramp up the political war. That's starting to really get heated. Right now, we're seeing that China's putting out tons of propaganda saying that Taiwan is part of China and that it's inseparable, basically. That's what they're saying. And also, I'm not sure if y'all saw this today, but there's a candidate running inside of Taiwan who appears to be making statements that are very favorable to China. And they're currently trying to unseat the current leader of Taiwan. And it seems to be they might be very friendly to basically reunifying with China and largely just abandoning any idea of being independent. So we'll just see how that goes and how that turns out. I'm not totally familiar with the opposition's perspective on the whole situation, but just from the clip I saw today, it sounds like they're sort of friendly with China to a large degree. So I think China is shifting focus to coercion. They're trying to do that. And also, there are rumors out there that Xi Jinping might be trying to convince the U.S. officials to basically abandon Taiwan at the upcoming meeting that's going to be taking place in a couple of weeks, which sounds like it could be plausible. So I'm with the 28%. But Enforcer, what say you?
So generally, the Kuomintang, which is the KMT, is the traditional party of the people, well, not of the People's Republic of China, but of the Republic of China, which is what Taiwan is technically. So to explain what they are, back when China had a civil war, way back after World War II, which was 1945 to 1949, there was this guy who ran the Republic of China, which is what Taiwan is, called Chiang Kai-shek. We called him here in America cash my check because the dude was known as being wildly corrupt. You could basically bribe him to do anything you wanted. And we did that a lot in the Second World War, believe it or not. We would just kind of bribe the guy to do some things for us here and there to take the heat off of us in the war against Japan and kind of put it more on the mainland sometimes. But outside of that, though, Chiang Kai-shek eventually lost the war on the mainland inside of what a lot of people would call China today, against the communist Chinese. So him and his government, which was the KMT or the Kuomintang, packed up and lived in exile in Taiwan, and that's the last holdout of the Republic of China that exists from the Chinese Civil War. That's it right there. That's why also, if y'all ever hear in academic circles, people say the People's Republic of China and the Republic of China, those are actually legitimate names for two totally different countries. The Republic of China is what a lot of people colloquially call Taiwan, and China is the People's Republic of China, which I also call Communist China, here on the channel to differentiate them a little bit more. So the Kuomintang back in the day was nationalist as far as China being a country independent unto itself. But over the decades, it's evolved heavily into just being nationalist to the point of it doesn't matter what kind of government and what kind of style it is, all Chinese people just need to be united under one China. So they've largely become the party that significantly supports reunification with the communist Chinese and largely even giving up the sovereignty of the Taiwanese government over a period of time, just so that way all Chinese people are united under one Chinese banner. That's largely their foreign policy sort of a prerogative, and that's also a huge part even of their domestic policy as well, is really just trying to find some way to reunite Taiwan with the communist Chinese. On the other hand, there's another significant political party in the country called the Democratic Progressive Party, which generally is the one that kind of, if they could, would declare Taiwan as an independent nation outright, which Taiwan has never officially done. They both claim to be the legitimate China and therefore a part of a larger concept of China. But they are the ones who largely want to declare independence from China and state that they're not Chinese, they are Taiwanese, and they have a completely separate identity and culture from that of mainland China, and they believe in democratic principles and also capitalist economic principles as well. So that's generally kind of the difference. And from what we're hearing right now, the leader of the Kuomintang, which this is nothing new, is once again heavily making friendly statements towards the communist Chinese and wanting to reunify with them, which the communist Chinese are always putting their dog in the fight behind that of the Kuomintang inside of Taiwan, because they're hoping that if they ever get a large enough majority in the parliament, then they'll basically be able to see peaceful reunification of Taiwan with China, and they'll be able to avoid having to go to war and invading the island to directly take it over.
That's kind of scary, actually. Like, I'm not sure what their chances of winning are. I'm not really clear about what the polling data is. I haven't seen that personally. I'm not sure if they have run any polls, to be honest. But we'll have to see. But that's a bit scary. They've got somebody literally that's willing to go pretty much all the way for China if they get elected for the most part. It's kind of a bit sketchy. But the bigger question for me is this. Even if the current leadership inside Taiwan stays in power and they stay there and they keep Taiwan separate and independent, is the U.S. going to be there when China tries to invade? Because, like I said, we're hearing that Xi Jinping might be trying to convince the U.S. officials to basically leave Taiwan by themselves and to basically let China invade it for the most part. And I'm not entirely convinced that the U.S. is going to be there for Taiwan. Not trying to, just say that the U.S. is going to abandon everybody, but it seems like the U.S. might not be as concrete about that as we thought before. Of course, there still is the idea that, of course, there's a major semiconductor industry on Taiwan that the U.S. needs access to. So that might be enough to maybe keep the U.S. on Taiwan's side. But, I'm hoping the U.S. doesn't decide to, give China too much leeway and then they try to, pull off an invasion sooner than later.
Yeah, I would hope that they don't, and that would be a worst-case scenario to see that the war starts over Taiwan, because technically, folks, we would be obligated to defend Taiwan from the Communist Chinese due to strategic reasons of a wide variety, and so for that reason, I would generally say hopefully we see that somehow the KMT doesn't end up getting a large enough majority that they're able to do as they wish, and then reunify with China peacefully, because that would strategically screw us over. And we would also hope that the Chinese never decide that they have an ability to go to war with Taiwan and invade them and forcibly take them over if the DPP stays in charge, because if that's the case, then we're going to probably have to go into a direct war with China to try and defend Taiwan. So hopefully we can still try and manage this tightrope of a situation and see that it doesn't go out into an all-out war, at least here in the near future, and that we also don't see that the KMT somehow comes in charge in the country to literally just hand it over to the Chinese without a shot being fired. But with that, I hope that does address that situation well, a very interesting one. And moving us on out of that, we've also seen that there is still some tremors going on of the cartel war that happened in between the Jalisco New Generation cartel and the Mexican government after the death of El Mencho in a raid that was conducted by the federal police and also the military or the army of Mexico. We did get to see that a larger Jalisco New Generation cartel convoy was moving around in the Guerrero state on this film that was made by the cartel, which is showing us that they're still exercising a significant amount of control over the streets that are within the Jalisco New Generation's territory.
They got the traditional AKs here. No ARs, it looks like.
Man, they got those 7.62s. This guy is just vibing. And
it looks like largely they're looks to be unopposed for the large degree.
Generally, they kind of are. Like, I haven't really seen a lot of clashes lately. It's just basically wherever the National Guard is, the cartel isn't. And wherever the cartel is, the National Guard isn't either. It looks like they're kind of avoiding each other and not wanting to get into direct confrontations anymore. But it is still a fairly tense situation in most central Mexican states, as the Jalisco New Generation cartel is still exercising a significant amount of control within the area and is challenging the central Mexican government's federal authority to be able to bring control back to these central Mexican states. But moving us on.
Yeah. Also, I mean to interrupt real quick, but take a look at Flight Radar 24 real quick. There's something interesting happening here. It looks like that Pakistani Air Force plane is literally converging right on the path of the U.S. VIP plane. They're at different altitudes. Like I think they're about 8,000 feet apart in altitude, but I don't know what the hell is going on with this. Like, what are they doing?
Well, what's even more interesting is that it's broad day. Well, I don't know. Maybe they're just. Where in the world are they going? I don't know.
I'm not even really sure. It's like why would they be converging with the flight path of the VIP aircraft like that? It's sort of a strange thing to do. I mean, it could be nothing. They could just be passing at different altitudes, but it seems a bit strange they're converging like that.
That is interesting, but they do have a significant amount of vertical separation. It's about it's almost 10,000 feet, so they are nowhere close to each other. I mean, that's an entire lone peak distance between the two of them, so they're pretty far apart. So it just appears that they're passing by each other, I would say, coincidentally, because if they were trying to ram them, I mean, that's a pretty bad attempt at a ram, 10,000 feet apart, you're not going to be hitting them at all at that distance. That's about 2 miles below them. But anyways, moving on from that, it is time for us to get on out of the central Mexican states and time for us to start moving on over and into Europe and finally into the war in Ukraine, which we have a lot of news to cover over the course of this night. First off, and unfortunately, it does appear that a large amount of European states are beginning to lean heavily on purchases of Russian liquefied natural gas. The biggest surge came in March amid escalating tensions in the Middle East and disruptions to supplies through the Strait of Hormuz. Out of the 5 million tons of gas shipped to Europe since the start of the year, nearly a third came in March alone. In fact, almost all gas from Yamal LNG, about 97%, is going to Europe. Europe does remain dependent on Russian gas, and in the first quarter, the European Union paid Russia nearly $3 billion for liquefied natural gas. This is a significant situation, as it does appear that at the moment, the European nations are largely having to shift back to Russian liquefied natural gas, which is economically propping them up a little bit, because they can't get access to the Middle Eastern liquefied natural gas that they had shifted to prior after the sanctions were implemented against the Russians. So this might be helping to economically prop up the Russians for a slightly longer period of time than they would have seen in a natural scenario where the Europeans didn't have to revert back to buying their liquefied natural gas. At the same time, the Ukrainians have also announced through the Office of the President of Ukraine that they will finish repairing the Druzhba pipeline through their territory this spring to unlock the 90 billion euro aid that was frozen by Hungary. For some of y'all to know, in the European Union, they passed almost unanimously, and Hungary was basically the only veto that came in the votes, that they were going to provide a 90 billion euro loan to the state of Ukraine to be able to help them to continue on the war. I didn't get the exact details as to whether that's raw cash that they can spend, or if the Europeans are going to hang on to that and then the Ukrainians can tell them how to spend it, or if that was just going to be provided in raw equipment that the Ukrainians would give a shopping list for, the Europeans would then buy, and then they'd send it to Ukraine. We're not exactly sure of the details of how that loan was going going to work, but it was completely, I guess you could say, hamstrung by the Hungarians and by Orban, because Orban told the representatives of Hungary in the EU to veto that vote, and if any country in the European Union vetoes something, it generally cannot go forward. And so for that reason, the Ukrainians are trying to find some way to appease GRU of Hungary, who talks about the goals, by rebuilding the Druzhba pipeline or largely repairing it, so that the gas from Russia can flow into Hungary, and then the little pro-Russian bastard in Hungary is happy, and then he'll hopefully lift the issues on the loan being provided for Ukraine, and then the Ukrainians will be able to access those funds and continue on their war against the Russian Federation.
Yeah, and also, by the way, with Hungary holding up stuff like that, like for example, this is Europe on their own accord trying to fund Ukraine with the 90 billion euros, and they had agreed to this like I think a while back, like it was several weeks ago, if not months ago, possibly. They agreed to this, and Europe was going to support Ukraine, but now Hungary is holding it up, and now we see the United States is campaigning for the guy inside of Hungary. We're saying that we're going to basically prop up the Hungarian economy and put the entire U.S. economic might behind Hungary. And a little bit odd in the scheme of everything with hurting Ukraine that Hungary is doing right now. But Ukraine did find a way around it, though. Ukraine simply went down to the Middle East. They found themselves a brand new opportunity to sell some drone technology to the Middle Eastern Gulf states. They did that, and the Gulf states in return gave Ukraine interceptors for their missile defense systems and all the weapons they were looking for. Ukraine did a swap, and they got them from the Middle East, which proves, when Ukraine sees a roadblock, they find a way around it pretty much every time. But they still need that loan, though, and it sounds like Ukraine's going to rebuild that pipeline, or at least try to reopen it so they can get that 90 billion euros.
Also, I gotta say, what are the trade relations that we have with Hungary? U.S. trade relations with Hungary. Oh, the Department of State has a little article on it. Oh, wow. Let's see. They continue to reach new heights of cooperation and achievement. Okay, so outside of the glazing, what in the world do we actually trade in monetary value? Oh my god. Oh my god. Listen to these giant big ticket winners, folks. Look at these. Hungary and the United States signed a memorandum of understanding on nuclear energy. Hungary signals its intent to support construction of up to 10 SMRs with a potential value of up to 20 billion. Damn, these are big money moves. What is this? Oh, look at that. Orban announced a nuclear fuel deal with a U.S.-based Westinghouse to supply U.S. nuclear fuel, and this is a $114 million contract. What a win! Wow! Now, what else do we have? Liquefied natural gas purchases. Wow, Hungary has committed to purchasing U.S. LNG at a value of $600 million. Wow, folks, this is like fighting for nickels and dimes out here. I mean, like, we're basically getting nothing from them. This is insane. Because, by the way, folks, we're comparing this to, like, the trade value that we have with other countries. Like, with Britain, it's like 70 billion annually. And over here, we're playing trinkets with Hungary of like 100 million here, 600 million there. This is basically a non-existent trade, like, that we're having with these people. But let's see here. And then all of this is security partner. I thought we hated the Europeans. A little interesting. We're doing security partnership with them. And
yeah, does anybody find it interesting? Does anybody find it interesting that the U.S. is so interested in partnering up with Hungary while they're bashing the EU nonstop? And also, we got the U.S. officials campaigning for Viktor Orban inside of Hungary and saying that those bastards, basically, like, they didn't say this in the exact words, but they essentially said this in a lack of better terms. They were basically calling the people in Brussels the bastards over there. And Hungary's fighting for real Western values, and so is Viktor Orban, even though he's very much friendly with Vladimir Putin for a large part. He's fighting for real Western values. It's like, why are we going out of the way to go help Hungary out? It's like, there's clearly something else going on here. It's like, I don't know what this is that's going on behind the scenes, but I mean, it's strange that we're picking Hungary out of all the different countries. It's like Hungary is like a nothing burger. It's like if we were chumming up to anybody inside of Europe, we'd want to chum up to Ukraine. They literally have the key to our defense for the future. They have drones, and they have sea, land, and air-based drones that we need access to. So why would we not be putting our economic might behind Ukraine instead of putting it behind Hungary that has nothing that we really need?
Oh, I just found the answer, Matthew. What do you take a spitball at the guess at how much we trade with the Hungarians annually in monetary figures?
Was it like six or 10 billion, somewhere around that range?
Oh no, you're way overvaluing it, like by a lot. Bump that down by about 60%.
To like a billion?
3 billion just about most years.
Well, that's like I said, it's pretty much nothing.
It's it's literally insignificant. Like this is so insignificant. It's unbelievable. So let me show you something here, folks, because this is what just blows my mind. Okay, so let me show you this. So here's the trade values that we had with coalitions and individual countries in 2025. So we shit on Mexico, but we have a total trade with them of $872 billion. And we talk about how stupid and incompetent Mexico is and so on and so forth, and how we don't need them. And they're the singular largest trading partner the United States has as a country. We do the same to Canada. We do the same to the Chinese, which honestly, that's kind of deserved. We do the same with Germany, which is the fifth largest trading partner we have. Japan, South Korea, the UK. The UK's trade value is actually 161 billion a year. But out of everybody that actually makes the United States money in imports and exports, which we make a killing off of a lot of these countries that we trade with in reality, that's why the GDP is skyrocketing every year. We're going to go and align ourselves with some just shit out of luck country that we trade $3 billion a year with in imports and exports annually. That's literally trinket money when we're comparing it to our larger trading partners that we're literally throwing to the wind at this point. We're trying to piss them off and basically have them all leave or have us leave NATO and leave ourselves high and dry militarily. And then we're also trying to basically screw over economic relations with a lot of these larger countries like the UK, Germany, Mexico, Canada, and so on. But for some reason, we're going to go out of our way to go funnel money into a country that we only get $3 billion collectively in trade from every year.
Yeah, I would say they need to take the leash off. They need to take the Putin right now is holding the leash. They need to take the leash and unclip it from the collar, and they need to set us loose from Putin's leash at this point. Because I mean. Oh, jeez. Like, I mean, right now, Putin's getting a windfall from the fact that the Strait of Hormuz is being closed and everybody's having to go buy the Russian stuff again. The U.S. is possibly looking to once again give Russia another exemption to export their oil to try to lessen the oil prices around the world. I mean, it's rough. Like, why the hell we're helping out Russia left and right like this when they're literally a national enemy of the United States is just mind-boggling to me. It's just mind-boggling.
It's absolutely insane. Like, I can't even wrap my head around it, folks, because people sit there and say, we get nothing out of Europe. But if you listen to those same people right now, they'll talk about, yes, Hungary is our friend. Those people are so stupid, they don't know what they're talking about, to be entirely honest with you. Because if you hear anyone saying that right now, it's like, so we're saying that the British, which we get $161 billion out of in collective trade every year, which is profit, mind you all, whether it's a deficit or not, is less valuable in every single way than Hungary, which we get $3 billion out of. How do people make that argument? And they make that argument, folks, because they don't know what the hell they're talking about and they're stupid. Like, I hate to say that and be upfront, but I mean, that's just, I just gotta tell y'all, folks, I'm going to be a gatekeeper these days on people just coming in and acting like they know stuff, because it's like, you can't say that a $3 billion country in trade is worth throwing away a $161 billion country in trade. It's completely uncomparable. Britain is worth in value about 70 times more of what Hungary is. It would take 70 Hungaries combined to even amount to what we get out of the British in trade annually. So why in the world would we throw away all of these allies for nothing?
And also, one last thing as well, like I was mentioning earlier about the whole statement right here. Look at the statement that was made today by the U.S. president on Truth Social. Go get this real quick. I'll put this under the likes tab right now. You can go grab it so that way people can read along with it right here. I mean, just let's examine this for a second, because it's really wild to see this right here.
One second, I'm trying to grab it really quickly. Twitter is running a little slow. Here we go.
So here's the statement right here. It said, my administration stands ready to use the full economic might of the United States to strengthen Hungary's economy, as we've done for our great allies in the past. If Prime Minister Viktor Orban and the Hungarian people ever need it, we are excited to invest in the future prosperity that will be generated by Orban's continued leadership. In the meantime, we are bashing the absolute shit out of NATO for not spending enough on their militaries because we're saying that the U.S. can't be funding everybody around the world because the U.S. has been the global police for ages, and it's not fair for the U.S. to keep funding NATO, even though we don't fund it. It's not, it doesn't work like that. We're bashing everybody for taking advantage of the U.S. economy. Meanwhile, we're literally giving an olive branch out to the Hungarians that have done nothing for the United States and saying we'll put the full might of the U.S. economy behind Hungary, which has done nothing to deserve it, by the way. And also, we shouldn't, like, who the hell signed up for this? We didn't sign up to start propping up economies of people around the world. Nobody did. It's like, and also, it's like, not trying to be political, but that doesn't even line up with this guy's campaign message either. So just being completely straight up, it doesn't even line up with it.
Also, here's another thing, folks, I gotta say. Right now, the President of the United States has been real big on the Europeans are moochers, like just real losers. They have no military, they leech off of us. We basically spend all of our money out of our ass for their defense, and they don't spend anything. So they now need to spend 5% of their GDP or else we're out. Take a guess, Matthew. Just a little guess. How much does Hungary spend in GDP percentage annually on their military? Do you think it's 5%?
That's probably like right at 2 or a little under.
Yeah, it's right at 2%. So apparently everybody else in Europe, folks, are weak-ass bitches and moochers, according to the president, except for Hungary, which is also in the same boat as everyone else, because Hungary is a friend of Russia's and also plays the stupid political game. And I gotta tell you, folks, I gotta say this one for what it is. This is just clear favoritism at this point that's being exercised, because everybody else in Europe is far more valuable than Hungary. I can literally point out any other country rather than Hungary, and we have a better trade relationship and a military relationship with them than Hungary. But for some reason, we'd now be willing to just spill American blood, sweat, and tears towards the Hungarians for just reasons of preference and really nothing else. That's something else right there. I got to tell y'all, folks, when it comes to supporting American interests, I've never seen a time in American history to where American interests are deprioritized and personal interests, it appears, are prioritized as a maxim over all other things. It's ridiculous. But moving us on from that, it is time for us to get on into a statement that came out of Ukraine today from Kirill Budanov. He stated that it is possible to end the war soon, according to a statement he made to Bloomberg today. Everyone understands that the war has to end. Unlike us, the Russians are spending their own money. These are enormous sums that are already measured in trillions. That's why they're negotiating. I don't think it will last much longer. That's the statements from Budanov. I do want to make it clear, Budanov has made the statements a couple of times before. He made this one last year in the spring, and he said, I think the war is going to be over by the summer because the Russians can't take it. So I want to put that in mind. I also want to make it a little bit clear, folks. Budanov has not always been the most credible person when it comes to predictions of the future in many regards. I have a lot of respect for a lot of people in the Ukrainian government, but Budanov has really built a case here on this channel of not really trusting a lot of what he says, because when we've trusted a lot of what he said in the past and reported at face value, it usually ended up being false or completely mistaken information or claims. But outside of that, a lot of people are talking about Budanov's claims today and what they're thinking about it. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Also, give my boy Budanov some slack right there. He did train with our people, by the way. He came over here and did some training with us and stuff like that. He was a part of Unit 2245, which was trained by the CIA back in the day. So he's got a little bit of American training in his blood, a little bit as well, along with that Ukrainian training. So he has said some things in the past that generally didn't come to fruition for the most part. But he's also, by the way, I actually made an error in the poll. He's no longer the intel chief anymore. He's actually the chief of staff for Zelensky. So actually had his old title right there in the post, actually. But anyway, so jumping into the poll, we did see that apparently they're saying today that the war might end soon, the Ukraine war, that is, and that Budanov has hope for negotiations. So do you agree? 46% said I disagree. The Ukraine war will not stop. While 30% said I agree, the Russians will have to end it. And 16% said it's a 50-50 chance of it actually ending and negotiations actually working. And I would have to actually disagree. I don't think there is much hope to be had here. I think what Budanov was meaning to say by this is that the Russians are getting defeated so badly that eventually they will have to call it quits because of that, which is largely what Zelensky's been saying the whole time. But Budanov worded it a little bit differently. But I don't think Russia's going to be sensible when it comes to negotiations. They've shown no sensibility so far, and I don't think there's going to be a deal. Also, I don't think Russia's going to give up either because they still have a ton of manpower they can pull on and keep on grabbing people and throwing them right into a meat grinder. And I see no evidence that they're stopping that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that the war is not going to be ending anytime soon, in my opinion, as well. It doesn't really appear that the Russian Federation is willing to end the conflict. They're willing to pull an all or nothing, from what we can tell, to try and force an end to the conflict that would be somewhat amicable to their terms. And I also don't believe that the Ukrainian armed forces have really proven that they're losing the frontline situation badly enough, at least at this point, that they would be better to negotiate an end now rather than later. So I would have to say that I would be with the 46%. I don't think the war in Ukraine is going to be stopping anytime soon until the Russians either economically collapse or they start a larger war with NATO to try and force NATO into the conflict, and then see that they're able to get a blanket resolution of the conflict that might be a little bit more in their favor than what they would be seeing right now. But moving us on out of that news, we also saw that there was a coup today over the Baltic. We were able to find one. It's an IL-20. Look at it. And it was tracked down by a Polish F-16 and a French Rafale.
I'll tell you what.
I tell you, man.
The Polish aren't strippers, but they keep a pole.
Man, I tell you, man, those Polish put the polish on them. I tell you, man, they put that shine on them on that cheek with that left hook. I tell you, they're really something else.
Is this the same coot that's been flying around Alaska last month?
It's the same type of aircraft, but we think it's a different one because they have, I think, a few dozen of these, and they're placed at different areas around the country.
I see. It looks like this thing right here is a harasser. They call this thing right here. What do they call it? They got all those like horrible names for stuff, like the what is it? The devil like missile, the Satan missile. They've got the felon for the Russian jet. What do they call this one rather than the coot?
Let's see here. What do the Russians actually call this thing? Because they don't give the name. They just say coot. So let's see here. The L-20. Huh. So apparently the Russians never gave it a little name. They just called it the IL-20. We're the ones who gave it the NATO designation of the Coot. But look at this one, man. I mean, Jesus, dude. This thing looks worn out.
Oh, man. Oh, well, I won't say that. I'll keep that joke to myself.
Bro, this is the flying equivalent of a shitbox Civic. Like a boosted Civic. Clapped out, boosted. Bro, they even got like damn Frankenstein bolts sticking out of the fuselage here behind the wing roots. I mean, look at that.
Yeah. No need for radar contact with this. You'll smell it.
Man, man, dude, I heard that the EPA had a stroke and died when they saw this picture because this thing is certainly not meeting Tier 4 like emissions regulations. That is for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely not. I don't think it's meeting anything. It's probably this thing right here. Poor old thing needs to have a day in the scrappers. Look, this one's a little bit better looking, but not by much.
Man, I mean, not by a lot at all. What about? Okay, so this one's probably the nicest one that they have on the Wikipedia. But I would have an honest feeling, folks, that out of the 19 that are in service right now, probably all of them mostly look like that. I mean, like that's generally, Russian quality of maintenance,
Man, this is like the Alabama. You know how the like folks in Alabama is, and we're actually from there. They get these big old trucks and they put these massive like lift kits and stuff on them with these massive tires, and they're usually like diesels or something, like these big old V8 diesels. So when you smash the gas and you kind of goose it a little bit, you do a thing called rolling coal out of the back, where it like blows out a whole bunch of soot like from the diesel engine out the back. This is basically what this plane's doing by default, basically. So it could be from Alabama.
Man, meanwhile, man, when you go inside the fuselage, it's just held together by a whole bunch of spit, duct tape, and Band-Aids. At this point, probably it's like, he's flying, but we don't know how much longer. But man, I mean, this is something that I find funny, folks, about, like, the Russians, is that people, like, yesterday we were talking about Britain, and people were like, Russia will eat Britain for lunch. It's like, no. It's like, that's what they're putting up against the British. And it's like, yeah, about half the British Navy is currently undergoing repairs. But the thing is that if the British needed to, they could put those ships back in the service, and they would still be better than the Russians. Have y'all seen what Russian ships looked like in like the 2000s. Like, let me go show you all this. Like for one of the most famous Russian ships at this point, the Moskva. Let me go show you all what it looked like before it had been returned to service, because I think they have it on Wikipedia here. They don't. So let me go put in Moskva ship mothballed. Let me see if I can get the images for this.
I thought this thing turned into a submarine.
It is a submarine now, but for a while it was mothballed on the coastline of Russia, and I cannot seem to find any pictures of it. Oh, wait a minute. Nope, that's not it. Oh, dang. I'll just have to pull up Russian.
no longer mothball. It's barnacles now. It's like at the bottom of the ocean down there like the Titanic.
Man, watch out, man. Robert Ballard's about to get to work finding that thing here in a little bit. He's going, there it is. But let's see. Oh, dang. Let's see. I'm trying to see if I can find you all a picture of these, like, ex-Soviet ships, because a lot of them just rot away. Like, the Moskva was one of those ships as well. Let me go here really quickly to the history of the Moskva, because it'll include it in here. Oh, here we are. So, notice this, folks. The Moskva was commissioned in 1983. It served for 7 years in the Soviet Navy until it was decommissioned in 1990 due to cost reasons. They then basically beached it on a shoreline and left it there for 10 years until the year of 2000 when they put it back in the service. And from what we knew, and this is what we know in hindsight now because a lot of Russian sailors that did survive talked about it, none of the systems on board for its 26 years of service that it had after it was reinstated in 2000 were operational. Hardly any of them were. And that's why I'm saying, folks, anybody could beat the Russians, because the Russians don't maintain squat. Like, none of it is well maintained. It looks like it might be if you look at it from like 5 miles away, but once you get up close, nothing on those ships or aircraft are hardly working, because most of it's Soviet era and hardly maintained. But anyways, outside of that, the Baltic states also put out a joint statement today, rejecting Moscow's accusation that they provided their airspace for Ukraine strikes on Russian territory. And despite the official reaction, Russia continues to lie, the Baltic foreign ministers said. So it appears that that's, business as usual. Moving us on out of that, the Ukrainian armed forces also conducted a significant attack today in the Russian Don. Yippee! And they were really causing some damage. The Tikhoretsk pumping station, which provides oil to the port of Novorossiysk, was hit again, and the fire was huge.
My goodness, what the hell have they done to it? They've hurt my boy.
Opa! Man, here's the pumping station, by the way, right here.
Oh, look at this. They had the blue roofs. Oh, oh my goodness. They're going to bring in the conspiracy theories. It looks like the blue roofs didn't save them this time. It looks like the fire got them anyway.
Also, man, what is this field? It's just got these random, like, high voltage.
Bro,
what the hell is this?
Is that the high voltage lines? Why is it all staggered like that?
Wait a minute, look at this. There's one going this way, then there's one going that way, then there's just this one over here. There's another one down here. There's one off on its own. What is this? What is this place? We got to look at this on satellite now.
It's got to be coming from a substation or something. I've never seen like high voltage lines like just bounced around like that.
Well, look at that. What is this? What is going on around here? What the? And then these are like old ones that were like just abandoned. They're like brown with rust now. This makes no sense at all. I don't know what's going on out here, folks. Oh. This. Oh my God, that is a 500 kilovolt substation right here. It's like half the size of the city almost. That's where they're coming from.
Oh man, I guess Ukraine hadn't caught wind of that one.
Oh, real shit. That's what Zelensky's saying right now watching the show. Oh, really? I mean, that's just right there. Oh, wow. We'll have to really try and hit that one. But anyways, moving on from that clip and on down into the area of Vladikavkaz in North Ossetia. Let's talk there. Как дела, блядь? We were able to see that a large explosion happened today in North Ossetia in Vladikavkaz. Oh, look at that. Automobile.
It's a big smoke. It's a big smoke.
Man, that sounds like a rapper name, Big Smoke. But moving on from that, we also saw oil. You heard me. but anyways, moving on from that, we were also able to see that drone attacks were conducted on Caspian Sea oil rigs over the course of the day as well. And take a look at these hits. Hoppa!
Man, you got to say Opa out here. There's nowhere to go. This thing, you know how flammable these things are, by the way. It's like, they have signs up all over these saying no smoking. Like, people know don't smoke on the damn oil derrick or you're going to be in some deep trouble. It's going to cause a huge explosion. They're literally sending in literally an explosive straight to the thing. So you got to imagine, man, they got to go to they better open the restrooms. Those people on this thing right here, they probably need a little urgency.
Man, honestly, man, they said, man, open up them shitters because I'm shitting. Like, I'm scared. Man, I tell you. But they hitting them hard.
There's a flames coming out the toilet, Blitz. It's coming out the pipes.
There's flames coming out of the toilet, Kathleen. Man, I'm telling you.
Oh, I didn't know we had an incinerator installed in the toilet. That's not an incinerator.
It smells like hat shit in here. Like, it's like, wow, funny you mentioned that. Oh, now they're going for another.
That's pretty impressive too, by the way, that they can just fly these drones over, the open waters like this. Like that wind out there is ferocious, and the fact they can just fly straight in, like high speed like that, it's pretty impressive.
Man, honestly, it is pretty impressive. They got some great receivers on these drones.
They are just hitting this thing over and over and over again.
Over and over and actually, these are all different refineries. Actually, some of them are hit twice, but most of them they're just hit once or twice, and then they move on to another one. So a lot of rigs were hit last night. But moving us on from that, it is time for us to get on up and into the area of the small town of Tinguta, which is along a highway leading to Volgograd. Let's see what happened in Tinguta in Volgograd. Let's talk double.
Oh, it was vulgar what happened in Volgograd that day.
Man, I'm telling you, it was rough. But moving us on out of Volgograd, it's now time for us to get on out of the entirety of the Russian Don region, and it's time for us to move on up and into the area of the Tver Oblast, as there were also explosions that were reported here as well. Let's see what type. Oh, the big type.
Yes, the big ones.
Well, let's take that, bleed. But from what we understand, it apparently shows that something was hit and heavily burning. We also saw there was an explosion within northern Moscow as well in this clip. And we could see railway maintenance of way vehicles. Wow, that's cool. Anyways.
Oh, well, that looks like firing an apartment.
Apparently it was some kind of explosion. Some people said it might have been some sort of Ukrainian espionage. I say that it was probably Russians cooking up crocodile that ended up, blowing up their apartment. That's what I'm actually assuming.
That might have been, just speculating on it, that could have been a gas explosion, like no joke.
Could have been. I don't think this was anything, like, big, to be entirely honest with y'all. But anyways, moving on from that and on into the central area of Moskva, we were able to hear that, luckily for the Russians, apparently the U.S. president is likely to extend Russian oil sanctions waivers as soon as Friday. According to Reuters reports, fuel prices spiking from the Iran war have the administration worried ahead of the upcoming midterms. So it looks like we're going to be giving the Russians another break. That's so crazy, And anyone who's a friend of Russia's...
I wonder if they're actually going to do that, though, because, they said likely, so it's not a guaranteed thing. So, they said the first exemption that was given to Russia was only limited to the oil on the Russian ships, and they let Russia sell it. So it's like, it's not really temporary if they end up giving them a second exemption. So I wonder if they're actually going to follow through with that.
I wonder. I really do wonder on that one. I guess we'll have to generally see. But we also were able to hear that, according to the Russian, the state-run VTS IOM, Putin's approval rating is falling pretty quickly these days. Apparently, within just the course of the few months of this year, his approval rating has fallen, even according to Russia state media, from 75% to 67%, which is almost a 10% drop in his approval rating.
How are they measuring that?
I don't know. But I'll tell you this. If Russian state media is saying that his approval rating is dropping, how bad is it really?
Yeah, I'm really confused at how they'd even measure something like that because, and also, by the way, it's like a state media publishing something showing negative approvals for Putin. I mean, that's a bit surprising.
And also, someone also stated this data was published by the state-run VTS IOM, so the real numbers may be even lower. And I would assume they're sure as hell way lower because here's something I said in my short war video earlier today, folks. Has anybody in the history of democracy who's been in charge for 26 years been able to be popular to this degree for this long? And the answer is no. I mean, look at anybody out there. Margaret Thatcher is probably the longest served prime minister in British history. And she was still eventually ousted because she eventually became unpopular. And she was around, I think, for only about 14 years. Think about this as well. In the United States of America, presidents can only serve for a maximum of 2 terms. And currently, with the current president and the last president, we've watched their approval ratings go from like 50 to 40%, or in the mid to high 40s when they started, down to the lowest levels for the both of them during their time in history that have been seen in the country's history. So if they're able to fall out of favor with the public that quickly here in the U.S., just for presidents alone over 4 to 8 years, over 1 or 2 terms, how in the hell could Putin still be popular with 75% of the population 26 years after he became the president of Russia? The polls are faked. I mean, they're absolutely faked, obviously, because nobody remains that popular for that long. If they look like they are, then they're lying and they're a dictator. But moving us on out of that news in the Russian capital, it is time for us to get on into the rest of the news that we got out of Ukraine over the course of the day. We have been able to hear that apparently Zelensky stated today that the Budapest Memorandum was a mistake and a deception. So it appears that Zelensky is looking back at hindsight and going, man, if only we had a nuclear weapon right now. It's like, well, you know, that's good thinking, but historically that just wouldn't have worked for them. There's a reason they had to give them up. And so, you know, interesting statement, but not really a lot to work off of there. Anyways, moving on from that and into our location unknowns, we also got a really interesting clip today. Apparently, a Russian Molniya drone tried to take down a Baba Yaga, and this is what happened. Boink!
Oh, what the hell? That thing didn't even budge.
Bro, the Baba Yaga is built of steel. Like, oh my god.
Man, wait a minute. Hold on a second. Let's see here. Dang it, I don't have a sound effect for that. I was about to say if I had like some crashing dishes or something like that, like when it hits that thing, like that would be perfect for that. But I don't have it. I don't have it.
Man, that thing crumpled up like a little paper airplane hitting a brick wall. Like it just like fell to the ground instantly. It's like,
wait a minute. Okay, I got one. Back it up and replay it again. Let's get this one.
All right.
Let's see here.
That was so late. That was so late. That was like,
I couldn't see like the soundboard was over the visual. I couldn't see the video, so I was having to like just guess at how long it was going to take. I was counting down in my head. That one sucked. Like I need the dishes breaking. I don't have that right there. I need to upgrade my soundboard.
Man, we need upgrades. Upgrades, people. Upgrades. Moving us on from that, we also got to see that the Russians were attacked today, somewhere in an unknown area of the front, by drones, and it was wildly entertaining. So here's the clip.
Coming! Sтой!
Oh my god, it's a drum, блядь! So you slam on the brakes, as much as these things have brakes that are even working. Oh, that guy just bailed.
Oh.
Now this guy's bailing.
His helmet was rolling.
Right, it was. Now they're trying to fire at the drone. Oh!
Oh.
Opa!
Yeah. This guy's a TikToker first. He wiped the camera lens off.
Oh no, it's a UAC 469 and it's cooked. Oh my god.
Прям в движок зашел, сука. Не ходи там, блядь, подорвешься.
And now
hey, yo, don't go there. Don't go there. Oh, a little bit of music there at the end.
Right, he said, "Don't go there," and then the damn Skyrim like menu music started playing. He's like, "Don't go there." It's like, what the hell is this? But anyways, they went running for cover, and it appears that they didn't really defend against that drone all too well. We also got to see the Russian casualty report over the past 24 hours, and it was something. According to Miss DC, keeper of the records, 2,232 drones shot down is the ninth highest daily loss, and troop losses on average are staying above 1,000 a day. And over the course of the past 24 hours, we have been able to see that 1,130 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed, along with 5 APCs, 183 supply trucks, 1 main battle tank, 45 artillery pieces, 2,232 drones, and that was about it for the day, but still incredibly large numbers and great to see. Moving us on out of that little bit of news and on up and into the area of the Kupiansk-Belgrade front, we got to see the 22nd hitting them hard. They actually have that Japanese light rock music playing. Bada bing and a bada boom. Very nice. Moving aside from that, we also get to see further down line near to Svatove, artillery of Ukraine on front. They still use M777 to great effect. Russia get artillery piece, I get better one. The Russians try to make drone, I make even better FPV. Russian pain in asshole, they don't make anything better. Very nice. But outside of that, here's the pictures of the Ukrainians still operating their artillery. This is a part of the 8th Airborne Corps, and it does appear that they're still doing their job quite well. Moving us on from that, we've also seen that further down the line and towards the area of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, we get to see the jankest creation I've ever seen of the Russians. They built one of those unmanned ground vehicles, and then they put a shitty 1960s era North Korean MLRS on top of it, and they're now using it as a multiple launch rocket system, like a normal MLRS. Now tell me this isn't jank.
It appears to be working.
Well, it might be working. Still, it's kind of jank, honestly. It's like a crappy MLRS on a kind of all-right looking sort of a little unmanned ground vehicle. Moving us on from that and on down into the area of Donetsk Oblast, we also get to see them striking Russian logistics and the special operations forces. Let's take a look at what we got here. Oh, we got a drone going to a warehouse. And wow, they got some pretty nice animations for a special forces group. I mean, dang. It's pretty impressive.
We know how much those cost right there. You got to pay a pretty penny for animations like that. Those animators aren't cheap.
Maybe there's an animator in the unit that did that.
They'd be lucky if they did. They're saving a lot of cash.
That's just petty cash. Man, they're really laying it down on them, I tell you.
What is this, like a chicken coop?
I think so. Oh, look, there's Kamaz supply trucks in there.
Those don't look like chickens.
Man, those don't look like chickens to me, but you know something? They do smell like chicken when they're cooking.
So a Russian comes stumbling out. Oh, look, there's the chickens.
Man, they don't taste like it, though, sadly. Oh, well, we can see them burning this place to a cinder at this point, believe it. Oh, dang.
They kind of put the hurt on them.
Man, you're about to turn into that one guy out there and you say, whoa, I mean, you call him a chesty puller, but look at that boiler. Whoa. Man, it's like every video. But anyways, with that, man, I tell you, this like, oh my God. Man, they're really starting to slam him these days, you know? They're not really giving him any sort of a break.
Yeah, the Russians are kind of getting used to sucking.
Hey, yo.
Well, not like that. You
no
kinda,
diddy.
You kind of got to like put the apostrophe at the end of it, like sucking, like instead of like I'll just leave that one be.
Yeah, I think it's best to let sleeping dogs lie. You know what I mean? Like the old saying goes.
Well, the dog wasn't sleeping; the dog was awake. But anyway,
man, he got that dog in him.
Man, I got that iron in me. You know what I mean?
Man, he means he has a knee replacement, by the way. but anyways, get him anyways. They're made out of iron and stuff and steel and everything, like medical grade steel. That's funny, right?
I don't think they use iron in those. I think they're using titanium or something.
What the hell are you talking about, man? The iron is great for the body. They always tell you to get your daily dose of iron. I mean, if you had iron knees, that'd be great. You got your daily dose of iron every day for the rest of your life.
I remember when I was younger, they were like, "This kid right here has an iron deficiency," and ever since then, I've always had that iron in me. Ever since then.
Man, I tell you, man, that's real. We also get to see the Ukrainian 27th Brigade was also hitting Russian forces down on the Zaporizhia front today as well, which we got to see in this clip.
Oh, they got that advanced stuff. Look at that. They got that antenna.
Man, they got that antenna. They got all of it. Oh!
Oh, wow. Did they just destroy their antenna?
I think they did. Oh, they're going to hit it again. Oh! Oh, my
Damn,
heavens.
Didn't need an antenna to detect that one coming. Damn, you could just use your ears. Look at that. Look at that thing toasting
Dang.
up. They're circling around it. Look at that cinematic view of that thing.
Oh, look, now they're going for an
Oh,
S300V.
oh, wow.
That thing looks like shit. I mean, like, this thing looks horrendous, man.
Like something out of a video game.
I don't even know who the hell thought that was a good idea. But anyways, well, you see it's in the tree line right there, and they're about to blow the thing up. Thank God. And, hopping. Come on, get us a solid propellant explosion. Come on. Come on, Vinny.
You know, this really has to hurt when you see equipment like this that has high dollar values on it, just getting lost left and right. Well, it especially hurts when the country is kind of broke. It really hurts then because they really just can't replace it very easily because they're kind of like a little bit short on cash at the moment.
They're also kind of short on the abilities to even build them. Like, if they lose them, it's like they can't even really do that either. Now they're hitting the radar system of the S-300. Oh, and there it goes. They about to turn it into a toasty one.
This is probably why Budanov has the idea in his head that the war has to end soon because, like, Russia can't keep taking losses this heavy and keep going. You'd have to stop. It's only logical.
Man,
But the problem is the Russians aren't logical. They'll keep going in the hole.
man, meanwhile, in the Russian Ministry of Defense, call up the cripples. Like, get them out there on the front. Give them some crutches and a gun. Like, man, that's legitimately what they're doing, though. Like, no joke.
Call up Grandpapa. He's going to the front. And literally, they have grandpa brigades out there in the front lines, which is honestly not really even funny. It's really honestly tragic. But, you know, it's just like the Russians are desperate. There's nothing that'll change it.
At the Russian recruiting office, are you a creep or a blood? I'm a cripple. That's close enough. You're part of the gang. You're going to the front. Damn it. Like, it's like, here's your AK, here's your crutches. Go out there and do something. Or, you know, don't come back. We don't really care. And then they send them out there. And that's a true story, folks. You wouldn't believe it. But we've seen that enough times to know that happens often in Russia. But moving on down into Bryansk, we also get to see that there was some explosions going on down here.
Вот, ну, дым большой, сильный.
Oh.
У меня я
What's
стою
this?
возле, короче, вот тебе кружочек снимаю котят, выхожу из ванны, у меня кухня открылась, ванна открылась. Капец. Прилет был.
And with the end of that clip, we actually have breaking news coming out of this moment. So, Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so let's take a second to stop the Ukraine news and jump back to the Middle East for a second. There's a new report that has just come out, and it appears to be, allegedly, U.S. intelligence is indicating that China is now preparing to deliver a new air defense system to Iran within the next few weeks. It's unclear if it's a replacement of a system that's been destroyed. It's unclear if that's the case, but the way it's worded sounds like China might be delivering a new, more advanced air defense system to Iran. So I'll try to look at the article itself. It looks like they list the source here on the screen that's allegedly this report's coming from. So I'll do some looking. I'll break back if I get some more news about this in a second. But it sounds like I said earlier, it sounds like Iran's also using this temporary pause for the ceasefire talks to also lock and load themselves against the United States, just like the U.S. is doing against Iran. So, you know, that's always a risk when you take a pause like this. So I'll do some more looking.
Well, that sounds rather unfortunate, but that's what happens when you create ceasefires, folks, and pretend like they're still around when they're not. But moving on from that, it's time for us to get on into the Kherson Oblast, where we also are able to see the 39th Marine Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces intercepting some Russian drones with the Wild Hornets. Take a look at this. Having a little interview here about how they do the whole process, and about to show how the magic works. Make the magic happen. There it goes. Off to go get a Russian drone. It's kind of crazy, folks. The Ukrainians have really turned war into an everyman's war. As long as you just have enough drones and you have enough people to operate them, you can basically win whatever war you want. Man, if only we had listened to them over the 4 years they've been fighting this war. If only anyone in the Department of Defense or the Office of the President had really paid enough attention over the past 4 years and currently right now to be able to realize that this is the way the war is going and we should be innovating instead of stagnating, maybe we would be able to see that we were having a lot easier time in the Middle East. But what do we know? We don't know as much as those guys. They get intelligence reports every day, and clearly getting intelligence but having a lack of any brains clearly means that you're smarter than the average man. That makes a lot of sense. But anyways, when you see them continuing to conduct their launches of the Wild Hornets, just look at them.
So I do have some more information here, real quick, while we're watching this video from the Ukrainians about this whole situation. Allegedly, with the U.S. intelligence saying that China is preparing to transfer new air defense systems to Iran, it looks like it could possibly be a new system that Iran does not currently possess right now. They're alleging that Beijing's preparing to transfer shoulder-fired anti-air missile systems, which we know as man-pads, and it sounds like it could be a pretty advanced Chinese version of a man-pad. So we have heard that Russia allegedly transferred some to Iran, but they'd already inked that deal back in late February. But they simply delivered them, and that's what we believe shot down some of these U.S. aircraft over Iranian skies. So it sounds like Beijing might be following up with their own shipment of man-pads, which could pose a different issue. I'm not really sure what the most advanced Chinese man-pad is, if we have any way to combat that, but it looks like China is probably going to escalate, it looks like. And if we're hearing this report now, it could already be in motion.
The only way to avoid that is just don't go low altitude and don't go slow. That would be the best way to defeat a man-pad. So hopefully the U.S. military, once the war starts up again here, probably in the next few days, does start telling our pilots again, like they did last time, hey, why don't you fly as low to the ground as possible and as slow as you can to be able to try and inflict the maximum amount of damage, because then we're going to be taking the maximum amount of losses probably at that point. But what do I know?
So it is interesting, though. Iran's turning into our version of Ukraine, like with Russia fighting Ukraine. It's basically turning into our version of that.
It kind of is, honestly. And believe it or not, folks, that was actually the end of our news segment for the night right there with that clip that came out of Kherson. Sadly, we didn't get a speech from the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, today, so we'll just have to move on and into the question segment immediately and without further delay. And it is a great time, folks, because we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all, and we get to talk about anything except for religion, politics, climate change, and whether the A-10 is relevant in modern warfare or not. And of course, folks, we're going to be able to talk about all kinds of fun and interesting things. I can already tell that someone's going to have a train question, and I am very sure. And Matthew and me will be able to have a comical exchange about why he hates trains so much and why I like them so much. But outside of that, folks, I'm just trying to prophesy so that way hopefully we get a super chat like that. But beyond that, it is time for us to get on into the questions. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so with no delay, jumping straight into our super chats, our first one of the last segment is going to go to Petsky. And thank you, Petsky, for the second support of the night. A very generous 50, yet again. And Petsky said, I just want to shout both of you some beverages of your choice on me. And please take a question or two from the chat. And because of the time difference, it's hard to watch live, though I really appreciate your work in the short war videos so I can keep informed.
And I gotta say, a humongous thanks, an incredibly massive thanks to you for the support and helping us to keep this channel running, Petsky. And I gotta say, thank you so much for wanting to get us some beverages of our choice. If I had to take a beverage of my choice, it'd probably be a Swig Strawberry Breeze right now, a 24-ounce Swig Strawberry Breeze. Those are delicious, folks. I don't know if y'all have Swig where y'all are from. Okay, well, basically none of y'all are from Utah, but if you're from Utah and you live
it's in Tennessee.
Oh, it is in Tennessee?
It's in Tennessee.
Oh my lordy! Where? And how many of them?
I think it's in. I think it's near Nashville. I think there's just like one out there. Like they're expanding.
Oh my lordy! But if you ever have a Swig near you, so if you're in Tennessee or Utah, you're in luck. Everyone else is out of luck. They have this thing there called a Strawberry Breeze, and it tastes like strawberries. and it's delicious. That's the best way I can explain it. You'd have to try one to really understand what it's about, because I can't really put it into words, but it's absolutely incredible, and that would be my drink of choice right now, because that is very refreshing, especially after coming off of a long and arduous hike. That's always great to have a 24-ounce strawberry breeze. But beyond that, I would also have to say, we will make sure to take one from the live chat here in the moment. But I gotta say, we're happy to know that you're watching the stream, even with a significant time difference, because what we always like to say is better late than never, and we always love to hear people making their pilgrimage to the Enforcer channel as it is live on air. So humongous thanks to you so much once again for support, Pete Ski. And with that in mind, it is time for us to get one from the chat. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so grabbing one from the chat. This one is going to go to Trek World, who said, have you seen the Iranians attacking the IRGC? And I did see a video of another drive-by. It looks like occasionally some of the opposition forces inside of Iran will just simply do like a gangster-style drive-by on the IRGC. They'll go by, roll the windows down, they'll go to work on the IRGC. So I saw a video like that yesterday again, but it's generally pretty isolated for the most part. I'm not even really sure how these people got their hands on the weapons that they have, but I have seen it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I've seen it. They seem to be fairly sporadic, so sadly it doesn't look like it's a wide sweeping sort of a thing that's putting the IRGC in fear or a disadvantage. Just kind of just a sporadic thing that happens in Western Iran from time to time. But I did see it. It's just that sadly we can't show those clips. We were going to show the both of them that we've seen so far, but we're not really sure how YouTube would like those, because they might consider it to be like gang activity, because generally that's what those would fall under, even with it being in a war amongst different factions and everything. But sadly we can't really show them on air. But a big thanks to you for sponsoring a live chat, and I hope we were able to answer that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, we do have a new Truth Social post that we could go over right now. So it looks like I don't really have I don't have it on Twitter yet. I'm trying to see if I can get it there, because there's a lot of ads on the other website, and we don't really want to show all those ads on the air. So let's see here. Nobody's reposted, so I'm going to have to be the first one to do it. It's really a shame I have to be the first one to post this on Twitter. So give me a second, of course. I'm going to post this on Twitter, and then I'll jump back to it. But stall for just a minute, and if you want to, you can go ahead and address the next super chat while I do this.
And while Matthew's getting that, we have a $20 super chat from Daniel. I believe it's Pigan, FWW, who said, praying for our military members in Guam as a category 4/5 super typhoon will impact them on Monday. How will the military in Guam prepare for such a massive and powerful typhoon? And that's a great question, Daniel Pigan, because sadly, I do not know how in the world the forces on Guam prepare for extreme weather elements like typhoons. So sadly, I think I'd have to sadly declare ignorance on that one, because I just wouldn't really know what they would do. I guess they would shelter in place and stay away from the shore or any low-lying areas of the island and try and find higher ground. That's generally what I would assume would be the natural things to do in a situation like that, and probably try and shore up their facilities as best they can to try and mitigate damage from floodwaters that might be coming onto the island, or storm surge waters that would be coming onto the island from the incoming hurricane. So that's what I would assume, at least in my opinion, but I don't know the exact details of how they would actually go about that and do that, because sadly that would be a little bit too minute for my scope, unfortunately. But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, we wouldn't be able to keep it running, and we wouldn't be able to keep this thing live. Folks like you and many folks who support this channel are basically the people who keep this thing running for the 170,000 people who have been watching this show right now, and also the 15,000 people who are still live on air, and the two of us, me and Enforcer Matt, that get to talk on air every single night. We got to thank everyone who supports this channel through viewer support, through super chats, because if it wasn't for y'all, this channel would have never been possible, and it wouldn't have been possible to keep this thing running as it is right now. So a humongous and tremendous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and with that,
Indeed.
Hopefully Matthew has posted that on Twitter.
Yes, I have posted it on Twitter. I couldn't unfortunately get the whole thing. Like he quote tweeted something, or he like grabbed a quote tweet. I couldn't include that in the picture because it simply wouldn't fit in the frame. But I got most of it here, and this is generally what it says. It says "great" right here, and he apparently took a screenshot of something. It looks like it's from Twitter, most likely, I think. But it says very cool seeing the wave of empty tankers heading to the U.S. to pick up some desperately needed crude for Hormuz starved markets, and all the tankers on the map below are empty VLCCs, 2 million barrel capacity each, currently headed for the U.S. Gulf Coast. So it appears to be in this image, it appears to show vessels heading toward America, or at least heading, by South America, possibly. The post here claims that they're heading toward the U.S. Gulf Coast. So, I really don't have anything to say about this, really. I mean, it could be true, this right here, actually. But right now, though, the oil price is not, decreasing because of this. And also, there are increased costs. If people are having to go buy oil from the United States, now it's still going to keep the oil prices high because now there's increased shipping costs to go get it. So I guess it's positive in some way because the U.S. will make money off of this, but ultimately, though, the only people making money are oil execs. But Enforcer, what say you?
Oh, man. Oh, man, it's happening in real time. Everyone, America's fine. We'll be fine. I said, no, they're going to have to buy the oil from us because they can't get it from the Middle East. And what are they doing? They're literally sending over a conga line of ships that are going to poke a straw in the U.S.'s oil supplies that are produced daily and just suck it straight out so that way we're also in a shortage like everyone else. Man, that's crazy. All those people who get their oil from Hormuz, we don't get our oil from Hormuz. It's not going to affect us. And here comes the literal line of ships that's literally about to bleed us dry here in a minute because everyone's got to get their oil from somewhere, and we're one of the few people who has any supply left, and then we're going to be drained clean of it. We're literally going to be plucked clean by these ships here in a little bit, and we'll be in a shortage as well. Man, it's crazy, folks. It's crazy because it's like having a very elementary understanding of logistics, especially in this instance, has put us well ahead on the analysis here on this channel than many other people have been so far. It's nuts. It's crazy. It's like, who could have seen this one coming? I mean, this is what I've been saying, folks, for weeks to everyone who's like, America's not going to be affected by this because we don't buy our oil from the Middle East. Oh boy, it's like, wait until you see what happens when all the other people who can't buy it from the Middle East have to get their oil. Where are they going to go? They're going to go here, and they're coming here right now. So, if y'all ever wanted to, folks, y'all can sit there and watch how this turns out, but we really don't have any other choice at this point because it's set in stone. This is going to start affecting oil prices here domestically. But anyways, with that, enough of that, folks. Enough of that. Sitting there and talking about how our analysis was correct for like the 9 gazillionth time. Well, what good does it do us? I mean, rather than like letting me know from all the clowns who've come in the live chat just telling us we don't know shit about nothing. Like, beyond proving those people wrong, which doesn't really matter, what does it do for us? Really nothing. But anyways, it does feel good, whether it's good news or not, which this is not good news, that we do get our analysis correct, because at least you'll know that if you're listening to this channel here, we got pretty sound analysis. But humongous thanks to Enforcer Man for sharing that with us. And I would have to say, much like the president, great, but for different reasons. But anyways, with that, we were on to the next one, I suppose.
And our next super chat is going to go to none other than it's Keith K. And thank you very much, Keith, for that 50. He said, why are trains stupid? And by the way you worded that, it sounds like you believe trains are stupid yourself, which, I can't really disagree with you. I mean, I like a good debate. I like a good argument. But at the same time, though, I can't really debate that. Trains aren't stupid necessarily. Trains serve a purpose. They are good freight movers. They move freight efficiently and at cost. So it's pretty decent for that. But when it comes to passenger trains, I don't really see the value in it that much. I think we've moved beyond the whole train thing. I would rather have the little, the Jetson cars or something like that. A little bit something along those lines instead of trains. I just don't like trains. I feel claustrophobic. I feel like I'm stuck on the rails. And, have you ever heard anybody say oh yeah, I want to get railroaded? It's like, no, you don't really hear anybody saying that, because to get railroaded, that's not a good thing. So, why do you think it has a connotation like that? Because it's not good. Trains aren't good. But Enforcer, what say you?
Well, yeah, but you never hear anyone saying, boy, I'd love to get highwayed. Like, there's not even a phrase.
Oh, there's plenty of people that would love to get highwayed. I know them every day.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. I said I wanted to take a ride. They told me to get highwayed. Oh, man, I'm telling you. But outside of that, I got to tell you, trains ain't stupid. Trains are what built this country. Before a whole bunch of people, boomers, acted like cars built this country, it was the railroads that were carrying their parents, so that way they could shaboink to half the boomers, if people don't know. It was the railroads of this country that conquered the West, that built up the industrial hubs that people bitch and moan have disappeared in this country today. It is the railroads that keep this nation running year over year. If y'all don't know, last year alone, U.S. railroads moved the volume of freight that was of that was of such size and tonnage that at the peak of the Second World War on the railroads in America, which was 1944, we moved that volume of freight last year in this country over the rails 3 times over. America has the most efficient cargo railroad system or freight railroad system in the entirety of the globe. And if it wasn't for the US's railroads, even today with them playing a much more low-key role in the public's mind than they did back then, this country wouldn't be the way it is. So when you sit there and think about these trains and why they suck, why don't you sit there and think about the Atchison, Topeka, and the Santa Fe's, let's see, what was it called? Oh, what was it called? They had the El Capitan, and then they had the Super Chief. And why don't you sit there and think about the Empire Builder of the Great Northern, or the California Zephyr of the Rio Grande, and all the other railroads that made this country into what it is, which was a superpower and a powerhouse. Because once we turned away from trains, folks, things started to go to shit. Have y'all noticed that? I mean, there's hardly any walkable infrastructure these days. You can't find parking anywhere. There's parking meters everywhere. Well, the trains, that's not a problem. Trains drop you off in the middle of the town. You don't got to worry about parking. And not only that, you're right there. And it's easy and convenient. Who the hell could ever complain about that? I think of it as support, but trains don't suck. Trains are the lifeblood of this republic, and the United States of America is a transportation empire, and I respect all forms of transportation that the United States either invented or turned into a mainstream thing. And so a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, but long live the railroads, long live the men of steel, and long live the republic. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Stop the yapping and listen. Only the trains is it. I don't think the trains is it. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that meme. There was like some meme out there a long time ago. Somebody was saying something like really like deep. They were like, yes, we have to go forward and move forward efficiently. And somebody was like, shut up, yapping and listen. It's like, honestly, like I mean, come on now. Honestly though, I don't hate on trains that much. If they come up with like a maglev or something like that, or like the hyperloop, if they ever bring that around, well, maybe it'll work possibly. By the way, I did see someone say what?
Oh, go ahead. Finish what you're saying.
I also did see someone in the live chat. I saw a green scan. They said, I saw Enforcer's channel being analyzed today on a different YouTube channel out there. I saw that as well, by the way. I saw that as well. Also, by the way, I think they are political, so I'm going to say this up front. We're not making a political endorsement or a statement or anything like that. We try to stay as neutral as possible. Even though people don't believe that anymore, they think that we're being partisan. We try to keep it as objective as possible. But just to say this, because they were using our tweet today to do some analysis of the Iran situation, I saw that the Midas Touch folks over there on their channel, which is a pretty big channel out there, they're obviously way more political than we are. But they were reading off our tweet today. I saw that. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I like they're reading off our tweet and using it as a piece of their like coverage right there, which is pretty cool.
That was pretty neat, honestly. And also, I saw someone say in the chat, and I want to find this again because the chat's kind of been going a little bit slow. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. Here for. Let's see. Oh dang, where the hell is it? Hold up. I gotta try and find this because I was about to address something, and it was going to be a pretty good statement and a really good topic, but oh dang, I can't find it. So sadly, I forgot it in the midst of Matthew talking about Midas Touch team, but that was pretty cool to see. We've been getting a pretty decent amount of exposure these days. Like a lot of people have been talking about the YouTube channel side of things and watching it and respecting it, and also the Twitter side of things as well. More so the Twitter these days actually than the YouTube side of things. But for most people are giving pretty decent rave reviews and treating us like a credible source these days, which is something that I gotta say we're incredibly proud of. I mean, on all ends, whether it be Twitter or YouTube, because apparently we're being taken as a source these days, which is a pretty interesting thing to see how that all changed, how that all came around. But let's see here. Sadly, I just cannot find what I was going to address right there. So anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one's going to go to none other than Anna Banana. And thank you very much, Anna, for that $20 support. And she said, thanks for all the hard work, and please take a question from the chat. And LT, LSA.
And thank you so much for the incredible support, Anna Banana, and thank you so much for enjoying this channel and our hard work. And also, I gotta say that we will make sure to take a question from the chat in your honor. And long live the Lee Spring Army. And what do we got from the live chat, Matthew?
So this one goes to Aaron Parsons. He said, is there a non-nuclear EMP that could take out drones like they have in Call of Duty?
Sadly, not really. There are some electronic warfare weapons, but they don't operate like EMP devices per se. Really, the only thing that can produce an EMP pulse in real life is a nuclear weapon. So I hope that has addressed that the best I can, at least from what I would know. And thank you once again for sponsoring our live chat, Anna Banana, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from none other than Thomas D'Orazio. And thank you very much, Thomas, for that 20. And he said, I haven't caught the live stream much lately, but my absence reminds me how good you all are.
Oh,
and
thank
keep
you.
up the good work. And question, is it just me or do the Ukrainians seem to be getting stronger while the Russians are getting weaker?
Oh, let's see here. But my absence reminds me how good. I gotta say thank you so much for the incredibly kind words. And also, we will try and keep up the good work. Now, your question. Generally, yes. It's kind of relative, but the Russians are getting a good bit weaker, and the Ukrainians are relatively staying at the level they've been at for years now. So it looks like the Ukrainians are getting stronger. In reality, they're about the same force and strength that they have been for about 2 years. It's just that the Russians are getting so significantly weakened and deteriorated at this point that it's making the Ukrainians look like they're getting stronger, when in reality, they're pretty much staying still, and the Russians are shrinking in ability every day. So big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep running, and I hope that has addressed your question well. Oh, man, and I just saw a great question, Mandy. I don't know if you saw this one, but someone said, do you have a great let's see, a great wand and understanding of the petroleum economy and of the match of petroleum refining? Do you have a degree in petroleum refining? I find that question so interesting, folks, because here's my thing. Here's where that statement's leaning towards, folks. It's leaning towards us saying no because we don't, and then they're going to say, well, then you're wrong on everything, and the president's right. But here's my question: does the president have a degree in petroleum refining? No. Do the people in the petroleum industry right now say that there's a severe issue going on? Yes. So who in the world do we use to get our analysis and information on what's going wrong? The industry experts. So I don't need a degree
Yeah.
because we just lean on the expert statements to get our analysis and say that things aren't going well.
Yeah, it's like if you go out to go buy a car or something like that, and you're like, oh, I like this car, or I like this car better. It's like, and somebody walks up just randomly, well, are you qualified to give an opinion on which car you like? Because I mean, did you design are you a car designer? It's like, well, you don't have to be a car designer to to analyze like a vehicle. Like you can look at it and just give your layman's opinion on it, possibly as well. So I mean, it's just it's pointless. It's
Man,
a bot. It's a bot.
It's a bot, but I found that one hilarious because it's like what point are they trying to make? It's like when it's kind of like the stupid question that you hear some cops ask people when some people are like, "Hey, look, you're like violating my Fourth Amendment rights. Did you go to law school?" It's like, "Did you either?" It's like, you're a cop. You didn't go to law school. You went to like a couple of weeks training course. You don't know shit about the law either. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, it's like. No, like it's those kinds of questions that get me just absolutely laughing. It's also another thing, folks, that's hilarious to me is that people will always ask, like, and they ask this to everyone, including us. Like, people will come in the chat and ask, "Do you have a degree in this or that?" It's like, "Do you?" It's like, "Do you?" It's like, most people are very specialized because if y'all have ever read The Division of Labor, written by Adam Smith, that was generally the book that laid out and has been the truth since then, that people are very specialized in their role and knowledge and in education these days because there's so much to know about everything, you can't know everything. And so it's really stupid to me that those people ask that question because it's like, okay, you probably work in an aluminum siding company. What the hell would you know about it either? It's like, it's like, hell, we do this for a living. Generally having to know enough topical information and then listening to experts to make analysis is like, you look at like a headline on Facebook for 5 seconds and then think you know everything. There's a big difference. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
Also have a 20 from Music Uploader who said, Islamabad. Anywho, does anyone else hear the song Battle Hymn by Manowar whenever ground troops are mentioned and LSA?
I personally don't. I don't actually know that song. I usually listen to old songs, the classic songs, them old school songs, the good music. That's what I think of it. But a big thanks to you for supporting this channel to keep it running. And I got to say that is a really interesting name for a capital city, Islamabad. Considering that they're an Islamic republic, it feels like it's like kind of a counterintuitive name. But a big thanks to you for supporting this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Miss Paula Thomas, and thank you very much for that support as well. They said the continued problems with the Strait of Hormuz show why the U.S. was stupid in refusing Ukraine's offer for help.
Yeah, I would agree. And it also kind of shows that the Department of Defense is falling well behind in the innovation side of things, because generally they're supposed to be on top of things and innovating, and these days it appears they're largely stagnating, which is an issue. But a big thanks to you for supporting helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Two Vikings, and thank you as well. They said, wouldn't it be easier to prevent this by deploying forces in the Strait first, deterring the IRGC from mining and closing it? And how does our government miss something so obvious, and even a toddler could see it?
Yeah, even a toddler could see it. We saw it on this channel. I mean, we're basically like toddlers ourselves. But outside of that, I'd say it would have been a lot easier if we dealt with the Strait of Hormuz from hour one, and that had basically been our priority. But for some reason, the powers that be knew better, because they always know better. They know everything about everything. So they thought they knew what was up, and then they found out that they didn't. And now we're living with the consequences of someone who acts like they know everything, to where no one can ever tell them different, or tell them that they're wrong, or suggest something to them that isn't their plan. So, that's kind of the unfortunate reality of the position we're in right now. And with someone like that who refuses to learn, the problem is, folks, is that it's probably going to get worse. Like when if a ground invasion is conducted in Iran, I'm just going to be straight up with you all. That guy is going to get involved in the intricate details, probably, I would assume, of what that ground invasion is going to look like. He's not going to understand what the hell he's even talking about. He's just going to come up with something that he thinks looks cool or sounds cool, or that he can say something about that makes it sound like the biggest, the greatest, and the latest thing. And then a whole bunch of guys might end up getting wounded or killed because someone competent didn't draw up the plans. It's just someone who lives in La La Land and Hollywood world that came up with it, and that isn't going to turn out well. That would be my assessment, but we'll eventually see if that ends up panning out or not, and I hope it doesn't. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for supporting up with this channel to keep it running, Two Vikings. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from BT Bread-tastic, and thank you very much for that $20 support. They said, hello guys, long-time listener and first-time donation, and stay neutral and keep rocking, and your analysis is much appreciated.
Oh, and thank you so much for the support. And I gotta say, thank you so much for supporting the channel for the first time ever. Folks like you make this channel possible. Whether you support once, or dozens of times, or none at all, people like you make this channel possible. And I gotta thank you massively for that support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we would have never been able to make this thing possible, and we would have never been able to keep it running. And so a humongous thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on and into the next one.
We also have a 20 from Golden8506, and thank you very much, Golden, for that support right there. I don't see a comment attached, but we appreciate that very, very much. We also have a 20 from Simon Says, who said, thank you for the reliable news, perspectives, and updates.
And thank you so much for enjoying our news, perspectives, and updates, because we try our best. And a huge thanks to Golden as well for that support without a comment. We thank y'all both massively, because y'all are helping this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Old Warrior Fella, and Old Warrior said, you do excellent research, but you also have some seriously educated audience to fall back on in the LSA. And that is true, by the way. We have pretty much experts from every field that's in the chat. We have lawyers in the chat. We also have doctors in the chat from various different specialties as well. We also have people that were in Intel as well, which is pretty valuable. And pretty much anybody in anything. Like we have people that worked in the oil industry in here. It's really invaluable to be able to talk about something on the air. And we may not, obviously we don't have specialties in everything. We're not like Kim Jong-un. We're not like great at everything. That's simply impossible. So when we say something, usually an expert in that field will jump in the chat and say, oh, well, actually it's like this and that and that and that. And sometimes we'll address it live on the air and actually get to sort of, get the truth about it right here from one of the experts. But Enforcer, what say you?
That is definitely true, Old Warrior, and that's what we've leaned on a good bit. That's also why, it's like with our analysis, is like people want to come and say it's BS. It's like, well, we have people in the chat who have talked to us that are in those industries. Like we had a fella a while ago who threw in a super chat, and he works, I believe, in the oil fields in West Texas, if I remember correctly, for an oil company, and they had a meeting about the price per barrel probably getting out to 150 at some point in the future. So then we work off of that because that's credible information. And then we work off of the expert statements that are made to other news agencies. Like, for example, I believe it was a certain kind of a financial investment group. They put out a memo inside of their company that was then leaked to the press that stated that price per barrel of oil was going to be skyrocketing if things continued the way it was. And then we work off of those expert statements, or we work off of the expert statements of people that we've known and verified that watch this channel that work in those fields. But sometimes there's people who come in here and they act like they know a whole lot, and then they don't really know anything, and it's like, well, everything you're saying is completely going against every expert that we've heard of. And and with the last guy here that I was addressing, I was like, someone asked, do you have a degree? It's like, well, it's like we might not have a degree in that field, and this person is claiming that they do, but it's like they can't even spell. I mean, they spell worked as WIRKED. It's like, it's like I generally assume that people who are college educated with some sort of a bachelor's in science or arts are at least educated enough to be able to spell properly. And that's kind of one of my big red flags, folks, that I didn't mention when I first addressed that, is that there was like a typo in every single word, to the point it was like, this person can't even spell, much less what they know about the oil industry, because you would think you'd be able to know how to spell before you started talking intelligently about anything else. And that's why I kind of address that person particularly, because it's like, this person probably doesn't know a clue in hell of what they're talking about, because they can't even spell proper words in English that are simple. I mean, they're like third grade level words. But a humongous thanks to you for the support, Old Warrior, and helping this channel to keep it running. And I also gotta say, a huge shout out to a lot of our channel experts. We don't give shout outs to a lot of them on air all the time, but a big shout out to Jay Bagwell for being basically our in-house gun expert, for Miss Disa being our Ukraine war spreadsheet expert, for Walter A. Lakota, who is basically he is the OG Ellison bosun, and he gives us a whole bunch of maritime information and knowledge when he's present and around. He's taught us a lot about the maritime world that I didn't know about, and Matthew didn't know about. And we have a whole bunch of other people who work in a whole wide variety of other industries that have also taught us a whole lot over the years about how it works and what's going on in those industries in the present day to make our analysis a lot sharper and a lot more accurate here on air. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again for the support, Old Warrior. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $20 support for My Trucking Travels, and thank you very much, My Trucking Travels, for that support. And he said, good evening, enforcers, and thank you for all that you do, and LSA forever, and heading for the Mexican-U.S. border with the border wall supplies, and he gave the coordinates, too. He said, videos on my page. Take one for the chat, and have a great night.
Oh, that's interesting right there, My Trucking Travels, and I have to take a look at that. And a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And I hope you're still having a fun time down there on that Interstate 10 grind. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Right Geek Project, and thank you very much, Right Geek, for that support. They said, why doesn't Turkey, a NATO ally, help us? Why doesn't the president pressure them? Unlike other EU nations, they share a border with Iran, and why use only U.S. ground forces? And why no Israel and Pakistan for peace talks? And would they honor?
That's a good question, and generally I wouldn't really be able to answer that well for you, because how the U.S. operates with Turkey and how Turkey operates in foreign policy right now is so unpredictable and so questionable in subject that I really can't explain how that's working as far as the dynamic between the two of them, sadly. You would think that they would be demanding that Turkey gets involved. They basically put no pressure on them at all, and it really doesn't make a lot of sense when you think about it. I guess we kind of lop them in with the rest of the Middle East, although they're not, because they're a NATO member, and they also have some significant relations with the European Union. So I don't really know. I guess they just consider them to be a part of the Middle East, so they don't put the pressure on them like they do the rest of everyone else in Western Europe. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Ride for Life, and thank you very much, Ride for Life, also known as Charge G to the channel legends, and we do appreciate that $20 support. They said, a little something for your strawberry drink fun, boys. It sounds delish, and LLT, LSA. I will say, at first, I will say, there's always like a thing, going to get the drinks and stuff like that. I like it, but at the same time, well, it's like, do I want the drink that bad or do I not want it? Honestly, sometimes I have to have it. I really don't have it a whole bunch, to be honest, but occasionally I will have it, and it's actually pretty solid out here, I will admit. But Enforcer, what say you?
That's what it looks like right there, and that's also what it looks like in the little cup that they give out at Swig. And I gotta say, folks, this thing looks rather fruity in a literal way, like I guess, But I'm not gonna lie, folks. I didn't know what Swig was about when I came out here. I was like, yeah, that sounds like it might be like some corn syrup slop. Honestly, I was like, it doesn't really sound that good to me. And then I had a couple of the drinks that they make from this place, and I was like, damn, I was like, these are good. I mean, these are really good. This is probably the best one that they have. And so I got to thank you so much for the support to the Strawberry Breeze Fund, because if y'all are ever around the swig, make sure to get one of these. Matthew, if I'm correct, you told me I think it's like sugar free, like it doesn't have any sugar in it.
I think it has less sugar. I mean, there other stuff's like loaded to my knowledge. Like it's got some pretty decent sugar. I mean, it's obviously soda, so I mean, soda's got a lot of sugar in it. But I think this one's like the lesser amount of sugar, I think.
I mean, this thing, folks, is like the equivalent of a lemonade, but strawberry flavored. It's just crazy good, and I'm like, golly, I'm like, and also, folks, it's great because the last time I had one, because I don't go to Swig often, it's like once every few weeks, but I had come back from Bell's Canyon. On my first attempt at the hike, where I stopped and turned around before I made it to the falls, and I was like, damn, I am absolutely bushed. And so when I was driving back home, I drove into a Swig, and I was like, I want one of them strawberry breezes. And they got me one, and I was sipping on it when I was going home. I had no water on that hike, and it was like the best tasting thing. It was like cold, it was delicious. I was like, man, I was like, this is great. So, you know, I have to say, it was a wonderful time.
Well, whenever I go get one occasionally, like out of the blue, I might get one or something like that. I gotta really put on when I go get it. I gotta be like, give me that little rock gut right there. You got that 24 ounce, that 24 ouncer. Give me that one right there, that strawberry rock gut. And I want that one. And it makes me feel more manly when I'm going to get it a little bit. So it gets to sort of like throw off a little bit of the other stuff, the other feels about getting a strawberry drink from the drive-thru like that. I got to throw it off a little bit. I get to compensate a little bit.
I gotta tell y'all, folks, they don't do you any favor though in feeling like kind of like questionable, like getting one of those, because whenever they hand you out the straw, because they give you a straw with these drinks, for some reason they always hand out the pink ones, and it's always like, I don't know, like it's like I don't know, but I mean the drink is so tasty. It's worth overlooking all that stuff. But I'll tell y'all though, nothing beats, like, as far as feeling like sus about something, going up to Starbucks and saying I like the pink drink. Nothing feels as sus as saying that. I'm not gonna lie, folks. Like, that is the worst one. Strawberry Breeze, it sounds kind of like, you know, like Southern Delight or something. You know, it's like, yeah, you know, maybe it's just like a nice marketing name. Pink drink, I mean, that's a hard one to order. I had it once and it was all right. I never got it again because, I mean, the name, for one, is a detractor, and secondly, it wasn't really that good. Like, you know, pink drink is one that you could easily go without. But Strawberry Breeze, though, I mean, I pull up into that B, I'll be like, I'm getting that Strawberry Breeze, 24 ounces, and it's like $4 or something. It's like basically nothing. You know, inflation and all. So I mean, that thing is a blast. And I gotta thank you so much for the support and letting us get our Strawberry Breeze drinks, because if it wasn't for folks like you, Ride for Life, we wouldn't be able to have these delicious, delectable delights to have on our off times. And so, a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never truly die. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And also, moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Duncan VR, who puts in 25 Australian. And thank you very much, Duncan, for that support, and we do appreciate that. He said, Baba Woof, crickets. Sir, I got the cards, sir. Sir, did I put pineapple on pizza, sir? Did I put it on there? Did I not? Keep the pineapple away. They said, pineapple, the apple of pine. Let's bring out Alan the Marmot. Alan the Marmot. They call him the Marmot. They call him Alan, too. He's a real good guy. Real furry guy. I tell you what, that sounds a little bit crazy. It sounds a little bit crazy. There he is right there. You see that? That's him. He's a contemplative fella. He's a thinker. He likes to think. He has an IQ that's off the charts. They said they gave him that cognitive test, and he aced it. He said, that's a square. That's a circle. That right there's a triangle. That's a polygon. They call it a polygon because it's got multiple sides. Multiple gon. That's what they call it, poly. But Enforcer, what say you?
Hello, Governor. I'm really contemplating life at this point. I'm gonna miss GTA and all that. Oh, which one are you talking about? 6? Oh, well, don't worry about that. You got ages, Governor. It's like, man, what are you on there? Oh, hello there. Hey, it's the real Alan.
Dear. It's the furry fellow right here. Look at him. This is what I was talking about. This is not trying to get anybody a little bit confused and mixed up here. Trying to keep it a little bit, you know, or a little bit clear. A little bit of whatever, you know, a little bit of brain slippage. Hey, man, a little bit of dementia kicking in, apparently. Matt's going downhill fast at 25.
Out there.
Oh dear, the brain worm. It's got the reins out, and it said, yeah. Go.
Man, you know when that worm is up there, man, every once in a while, like it's and then like gives a message like make make the regulations to where the meat temperatures in the freezers is higher so that way my kind can survive. And then he goes, I need to see that the meat is refrigerated at a higher temperature, more in the 40s or 50s, so that way the worm types can survive. Like, have you ever had mercury for a cold? But beyond that, the marmot is really something else right here. I mean, it really is, man. And look at this thing, the beautiful fur coat. You know, I bet you, man, the artist never saw one of these things in real life. I think we've said this before, because this thing looks so much like a rat. It's like someone tried to describe to him what a marmot was, and his only point of reference was a rat, so he just made a big fat rat, and that's what he thought a marmot was.
Well, you gotta give them a break. I think when this was made, this was back when they thought the Earth was flat, and that the
No,
Earth revolved around the universe. I think.
no, man, no, man, that's a myth. Everybody knew the world was round since like antiquity in ancient Greece. Like the thing.
I thought they were scared to sail out though, because I thought the Earth was flat, and if you sailed out too far from home, you might just like fall off.
Oh no! They were scared of sailing out into the sea because there was no way to like navigate for most of history up until that point. So they thought they'd get lost and just die at sea. Like that was the main reason why no one did that up until that point. But then when they created the astrolabe and a fairly reliable compass, and they could track the stars and navigate off of that, then they were like, okay, we can actually go out to sea and find our way back and not get lost and die. And then that's what made the voyage to the Americas possible then, is because Christopher Columbus was like, Christopher Columbus was kind of an idiot because he went up to the Spanish government and he was like, oh, the Earth isn't actually round like a sphere. It's actually shaped like a pear. And so we're up at the top end of the pear where it's narrow. So we just sail around. We can probably make it to India way easier because it's going to be shorter for us. And for some reason, the Spanish government, which was the king and queen at the time, were stupid enough to believe that, and they gave them the finances to go and sail around the pear, basically, and find the Indies. And then when they ended up sailing over to what is the Bahamas, or basically the Caribbean, he was like, oh, wow, I found India. And that's why it's called the West Indies, is because when Christopher Columbus died, they had not yet even realized, he hadn't even realized, because funnily enough, he had never been to India, that he never made it to India. He made it to an entirely different place, and then they found that out, I think a decade or a couple after he died, and then they're like, this isn't even India, this is a totally different place.
Yeah, back in, you got. I'm not. Maybe that's the case. Possible. I could have sworn they thought that they were going to fall off or something like that if they went out there too far in the water. But maybe I'm mistaken. But there was a lot of weird concepts back in the day. Like even like people always praise Isaac Newton. They're like, oh, Isaac Newton, like the father of physics and stuff like that. It's like, has anybody really examined what he was coming up with? It's like, well, his first law, like the law of inertia. An object at rest stays at rest. Like, well, no joke. Like, if it's sitting still, it's not going to start just moving out of the blue. It's like, I mean, I could have told you that. It's like, I mean, what kind of law is this? What I'm saying. Also, like the third law, like the law of action. Like for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Like, well, yeah, well, no joke. If you like, push a car, it's like obviously it's going to move. It's like, I mean, come on now.
Well, you wouldn't believe this, but that was kind of not known at all up until that point. Like up until that point in time, like it was a common belief even then that like for example, when you catch like wood on fire in a fire, it burns, right?
Oh yeah,
And that's
yeah.
because it reached a certain temperature. Well, back in the day, they actually thought that fire was inherently inside of flammable things, and you just found ways, like with sparks and whatnot, to coax the fire out of the thing that it's in. Like they actually thought that. And like it was all kinds of weird ideas that they had back then because they didn't really know as
Oh,
much about science as we do now.
yeah. Also, I'm being kind of facetious. Like I'm being halfway facetious here. I see Miss Deesa says that's called fundamentals. Everyone needs to agree on it. That's true. Like you have to get the basics written down like concrete. Otherwise, you'll have clowns going around talking about, well, no, an object at rest won't stay at rest. An object at rest will start moving if it feels excited enough to move. And you gotta nail down everything. Like doing the channel here, like you really have to nail down everything because there's somebody will come out of the woodwork and they'll debate the basics. So you gotta put it away. And put it to rest, basically. So I guess Isaac Newton, like his main claim to fame was basically he wrote the thing down. Like he basically wrote it down and he got to put his name next to it for the most part.
You know what? You know what's kind of crazy, man, is that while Isaac Newton is considered a mathematical and scientific genius, you know he actually got scammed and basically died broke because he got scammed. Did you know that?
Yeah, that's the law number 10 that you forgot to write down. Don't let them pull a shiesty on you. Be careful.
Man, he got scammed. I got to show you this because this one's absolutely insane. He got scammed by the South Sea Company or the South Sea Stock, which was just basically kind of like a Ponzi scheme of its day. But this was their emblem. And I mean, honestly, folks, if I was living in the 1700s and I saw a logo like this, I would assume these people are full of shit because this looks like the equivalent of like a crypto bros kind of a thing, that's like pulling like a crypto scam back in the day, but in the modern day, but back in the day kind of a deal. But Isaac Newton actually put a whole bunch of money into South Seas stock, and I need to see if I can find you the graph. Here it is. So he put in his money about right here, and then it made it to here, and then he cashed out. And then it made it to about here, and he put all of his money in, and then the scam was uncovered, and the stock literally crashed, and I think he exited about right here, so he lost everything, basically.
He got crushed in the bull run.
That dude, the old classic bull run. Not even geniuses like Newton can see that one coming. They just get steamrolled by the shit. But yeah, he died broke.
Well, hell,
because of that.
at least he wasn't pumping dumping. Yeah, at least he was doing it the right way.
Man, I mean, I guess at least he kind of was doing it the right way. But it kind of a crazy fact about him. Also, there's like, not to get into like the morbid here, but there's also some rumors that he would frequent the working women of wherever he was, and some of them would end up kind of mysteriously disappearing after he'd hang out with them. And there's kind of an idea these days that he might have been kind of a bit of a serial killer of a sort, towards
Come on,
the women of the night.
We don't know anything. We don't know anything about that. That's some myth or some rumor. Or
No,
something.
I mean, like, legitimately, like, there was a couple of times where they're like, "Oh, that's crazy." Like that lady there who works at like this brothel, like, she went and hung out with him, and then she disappeared. Nobody knows really what happened to her.
That's not like some old wives' tale or
Oh,
something. That's like something that was getting around the town.
I mean, you can pull it up. I mean, there's like legitimate historical discussion on that because they're like, did he go around killing them or not? And nobody really knows because there was never enough proof. It was just recently, man, that we found out that Jack the Ripper was apparently some Polish immigrant that moved to London. We just found
I
that
don't
out.
think that was Jack the Ripper. I think Jack the Ripper. They remember they saw that in Star Trek. It was that entity that jumped from person to person.
I hope you all die. Wait, was that one?
Yeah, that's what the character said.
Yeah. Well, obviously, like I'm not. That's
Well,
obviously
just
not
in
my
case nobody
voice.
gets
I'm
the
imitating.
reference. Just in case nobody gets the reference, just want to make sure.
But beyond that, though, like, they only found that out recently with forensic evidence who Jack the Ripper was. Eventually, at some point in the future, we might be able to find out through forensic evidence whether he actually did that or not. I don't know. Like, the jury's out on that for me. But then again, folks, I mean, if you look back at a whole lot of people historically that are looked at with clean records, you can find you can find some pretty interesting stuff about each and every one of them. Like, some people won't know this, but like, Henry Ford was like a big fan of Mustache Man over in Germany, and he actually wrote like a very significant pamphlet that was distributed throughout the Ford company during that time, and then became popular reading for really anyone who kind of leaned towards those beliefs in America and even in Germany. Y'all wouldn't believe it, but what Henry Ford wrote, the little pamphlet that he wrote at the time, which I'm not going to say the name of, Mustache Man actually had that republished on the German government's expense for the German people to read because it aligns so much with his ideology. Like, a lot of people don't hear that about Ford, and that's kind of like a thing that people like to like kind of gloss over. And a lot of people also like to gloss over that John Pemberton, who was the founder of Coca-Cola, was actually a morphine addict, basically like a crack fiend who was trying to find a way to wean himself off of morphine by developing a cocaine addiction through his own creation of Coca-Cola at the time. Like, a lot of people don't talk about this kind of stuff because and also a lot of people don't really know how to take it because people have to look at things as either this guy was a good guy and there's no question about it, or he was a bad guy and there's no question about it. But usually most historical figures are actually incredibly nuanced, and while some things that they did were very influential or great, sometimes their personal lives were actually pretty questionable, and you look at them, you'd be like, oh, that's something else. Never meet your heroes.
Nobody's a saint. Nobody's a saint. Everybody's got some skeletons in the closet somewhere if you look hard enough.
Yeah, like that island. But he did Pleasure
Oh,
Island.
well.
No.
Well,
I mean,
that goes beyond a skeleton in the closet. That's like, maybe a warehouse, possibly.
I think that's what they call, what is it, Matthew? A distribution warehouse of the largest degree, something like that?
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, something like that, Jesus. But anyways, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 50 from Chef Danny B. And thank you very much, Chef Danny, for that $50 support. And he said, good evening, enforcers and the beautiful people of the LSA. Good evening. And I've been watching that drone hit that camera, and I just fall down. It was like me running my bike into the corner of the porch when I finally got it started. LOL. And LT, LSA.
Oh yeah, that Molina running into that Baba Yaga was hilarious. That thing literally folded like a paper plane on the side of that Baba Yaga. It really makes you think. Those things are pretty heavy. Like, I think they say Baba Yagas are like 28 kilograms. So, I mean, those things have some heft to them, 28 kilograms is not light. And that Molina definitely proved it. I mean, it literally just crumpled up on the side of that thing and then fell to the ground. But a humongous thanks to you for support. Also, great to have you here tonight, Chef Danny B, chef of the LSA. And I got to say, long live the Lee Spring Army. And I got to say, that was a pretty funny joke right there, too. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $15 support from Paul Weekly. He said, haters will be haters. You both do important reporting, and thank you.
And thank you so much for the support. And as Peter Weber, I think his name was, said, whether they love me or hate me, they watched, and that's all that they could do. He also coined the famous quote, "Who do you think you are? I am." And honestly, I got to say that is probably one of the most baller quotes in bowling history. But big thanks to you for the support, and I was shouting to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Keith Sires. He said, you are steam engine fans. Oh, not me. Not me. I think you've gotten mixed up. I think you mixed me up with possibly Enforcer Andrew over there. He's a steam engine fan. He said, how many engines use wood for fuel?
Most early ones did, but most of them would move on to coal, because back in the early history of the United States, wood was pretty easy to find, so it was the easiest source of fuel. But the problem is that the United States... Let me show you this. This is actually an interesting fact. U.S. Let me see if I can show it. So this is a map right here, and I find this one wildly interesting. Let me see if I can go and get it on Reddit so I can get it full screen. So this is the map of virgin forests in the United States. And to explain what those are, virgin forests are forests that have been untouched for the larger part by human activity and have had several generations of growth that has largely been undisturbed. And if y'all look at this map right here of virgin forests, y'all will notice that by the year of 1990, there is basically no virgin forests left. Most of them were completely deforested in between the 1850s and the early 1900s, specifically for fuel, and also for a whole bunch of other purposes. So a lot of the forests you'll see these days in the United States are nowhere close to what they used to look like back when the United States was in its early history, like the 1700s and whatnot. So back in the day, because fuel, wood specifically, was so abundant, a lot of early American steam engines would use it. But around that time of the 1880s and so, when trees started to run on low supply over most of the country, they started to turn to coal. And another interesting fact is that down in the U.S. Southwest, kind of around here in Utah and Arizona and elsewhere, where there really isn't a lot of, say, coal available, or at least back then, as they thought, they were mistaken, they would actually find a way to use oil, like just straight up crude oil, and have it atomized and then burned to be able to create the fires and the boilers that would produce the steam. But that was generally the times that you would see that wood-fired steam engines and boilers were incredibly common. Was in early American history, but most, if not all of them, were phased out by the late 1800s and the turn of the century of the last one. But I do thank you for supporting up with this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our next super chat. This one goes to Wakus, who puts in a 10 and said, can you explain Lee Spring Army to me? When I think of a Lee Spring, I think of cars and trucks.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. Way back in the day, I got this fact wrong, and it was pretty funny. I said that leaf springs were obsolete, which was totally wrong. I watched a 1930s Chevrolet informational documentary thing, and they said that leaf springs would be obsolete in like 10 years. So I just took it at face value that they were right. Turns out they were wrong. Leaf springs are still around. So I said they were obsolete, and the chat grilled me for 2 days on that one. And it was such a bad grilling, it became hilarious. And then we started to make jokes about it. We were like, hey, y'all are like the leaf spring people. And then someone said, hey, it's like the leaf spring army. And I was like, that's it. That's what we're calling it. It's the Lee Spring Army, and so that's how it's stuck. But we tried to make an ideology out of it, of a sense. So it has some defining beliefs. It has a flag. It has an anthem. It has a whole bunch of cool stuff to it. But the name is a bit of a joke. But I like to think that the actual movement of the LSA in the group is a serious thing. But a big thanks to you for support. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Keith Sires yet again. He said, I missed to say, long live the LSA.
And long live the Lee Spring Army. And a huge thanks to you for the support. And we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Keith Sires yet again. He said, how would you win the hearts and minds of the Iranian people?
Well, you can't do it now. I mean, once you lose them, you lose them. But the way I would have done it is fighting the war in a civilized way and fighting it with some sense and not threatening to wipe out an entire civilization and also not being there for them when I encourage them to go out into the streets. Because don't worry, if the Iranian government shoots you, we'll be there to protect you, and then let 40,000 of them get gunned down and never be there for them in the midst of that happening. So that's what I would have generally done to win over their hearts and minds, but those moments of opportunity have come and passed, and really we kind of have to just work with the situation we have, which is probably nobody trusts us down there, and if anything, they might not even be a fan of us any longer. But a big thanks to you for supporting helping this channel to keep it running, and with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have another 10 from Keith Sires. He said, do you know anything about the SS Richard Montgomery?
Sadly, I actually don't, Keith. That's one that I wouldn't know about, but I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, and with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Always Reason. He said, the Russians are cutting your cables. And I think, also, by the way, like the Russians are always cutting cables. They have a thing with like cutting cables and stuff like that. It's almost like a cable TV salesman. They're always like, cut the cable, move over to streaming. It's like, I mean, I'm not trying to buy it. Like I have to pass. And the Russians are like, no, I insist. And then they cut your cable like involuntarily. I think YouTube might have been maybe having some problems tonight. I think, or maybe it was an internet issue on one of our ends, possibly. I'm not really sure. But Enforcer, what say you?
I don't think it could be an internet issue on my end, because like a lot of the stuff that we were concerned about prior has been fixed, and also on top of that, my internet was coming through, according to my computer, fine as punch. I mean, it was getting like 4 bars of internet according to the little Wi-Fi symbol in the bottom right. So I think it might have been an OBS or a YouTube server issue, and those things do happen from time to time, unfortunately. So hopefully it won't be happening anytime soon. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep running, and I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Frosty Roeder, who said, this day in U.S. military history number 2, April 10th, 1962, the nuclear-powered attack submarine, the USS Thrasher, sank during deep diving test about 220 miles east of Cape Cod, causing the loss of 129 sailors.
Oh, yeah, that's actually a pretty bad one. That's also a very morbid one to hear about, because I wish I could go into the story a good bit, but they were doing the test depths or the test dives on this thing to make sure that it was pressure tested properly at the right depths. And the radio transmission came in, were descending, I think it was like to 900, and then they started descending well below that. And then like a garbled transmission came through, and I think only one word was hearable from it. And then on the seismophone that they had on the ship above, they just heard this loud boom in the water. And then they just started seeing that bubbling water, like it was almost like the surface of the water near to the ship was like boiling because of all the oxygen coming up. And then at that point, they had known that the hull had ruptured and the submarine had imploded. And it was basically to explain it to everyone, because y'all all know this one, the Titan submersible. It was basically what happened to the Titan submersible, but to a far larger submarine that had 126 people on board when it went down. So a very unfortunate one. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 10 from Always Reason yet again. He said 90% of the Russians never make it to the front. Drones can be launched from almost anywhere, and the U.S. doesn't have Russian tolerance for casualties. We have to do it, but what would be a viable plan, and what would that look like?
I'd have to. Sadly, I think a viable plan would take too long to explain, because we're starting to get really late into the night. But to try and boil it down to its basics, a viable plan would be sufficient air cover and indirect fire support for a limited ground incursion somewhere along a shoreline to hold that area for a specific period of time. That would largely be the most viable sort of operation, the most boiled down basic way that I could explain it, because getting into incredibly intricate details would probably take about 20 to 30 minutes, sadly. But outside of that, that's also true. Drones can be launched from anywhere, but there's also an importance, especially when it comes to a moving target, that if you launch from the northern side of Iran, that drone's probably going to take about 8 hours to make it to the Strait. And by then, the situation may have changed considerably as to where that target is and what its current location and heading is as well. So that has to be factored in, that for a proper response to be made and for a proper blockade to be made, Iran really wouldn't be able to do that effectively from the other side of their country unless they were firing off drones all day, and most of them weren't hitting anything, and they were just hoping that some of them would get lucky and close enough to something to actually cause some damage. So a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Mr. Mango, who said, name one time in the last century that the U.S. staged and launched expeditionary forces from their own territory. I'll wait. U.S. military power is reliant on regional alliances.
Actually, there is a time when we launched expeditionary forces into northern Mexico to try and wipe out Pancho Villa and his gang of bandits. I mean, that's one time, but, to be entirely honest with you, that's the only time. And that technically doesn't even meet your qualification of the last century, because that was about 110 years ago at this point. So you're actually right, as largely the United States does rely on our fellow allies to be able to create our expeditionary forces and send them to where our interests lie. And so you are completely correct on that, and I would have to say, I wish that people in the government would realize that and appreciate it, because apparently they're completely ignorant of the appreciation of that fact historically. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have another 10 from Always Reason. You say each flight is like a Indiana Jones movie.
I mean, kind of, yeah, I suppose. It kind of is, but a big thanks to you for the support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Votive74, and thank you very much, Votive, as well. They said, when will we get cool music like Vietnam got with CCR?
I don't know. These days, all music is made in a think group in like a corporate office, so you'll probably never get any of it because they're going to make all their songs as safe and sanitized as possible. And that's what also, like, I don't want to get into that whole rabbit hole, but that's why I hate modern music, is because all of it is so sanitized and made to be as marketable as possible that they don't really have any real character or passion or anything to them anymore. That's just why I don't like any modern music for the larger part. But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10. We also have a 10 from Game Theory, and thank you very much, Game Theory, for that $10 support. They said, you ever thought about bringing people from the chat on and actually take calls or from them? Now, that's sketchy. That is sketchy. Like, we got to be very careful about just bringing. We would actually love to have people like have a moment where we could bring people on to speak and stuff like that. But we got to be careful though, because if you bring on random folks, obviously there's nefarious people out there. So if you bring on the wrong person, they say the wrong word, they say a slur or something like that, and then we are finished. We are cooked. We are kaput at that point. We are off the air. Cables cut involuntarily. So we really can't do it for that reason because people are going to come on and say something crazy. And honestly, also at the same time, we might disagree with somebody that we bring on, and it could turn into possibly a fight. I'm not sure if we want to start getting into like a boxing match, like live on the air or something like that. But Enforcer, what say you?
My one question, and I said it in the middle of Matthew making his statements on it, but have you ever heard of C-SPAN? And if you have, you will know how many times they have been had. Every single time they do the phone segment, because every single time they do the cold call phone segment on C-SPAN, there is always someone in there who's like, man, those girls, I crawled naked through a cactus patch, or something like that, and then they have to try and hang up the phone call. And while we don't have like this FCC breathing down our neck because we're on YouTube, and so we don't have to really abide by the FCC's regulations, we do have to abide by YouTube's terms of service. And if someone came on and just like threw out like a slew of racial slurs on the show live on air, then we wouldn't be able to mute it because there's really no way to do that. We would immediately get a community guideline strike for that, or the channel might just be removed altogether. And so it would be really cool to do it. It's just that the risk is so large that if we ever did something like that, it would have to be pre-recorded to where we can vet everything and then run it kind of like as a break for the live show, though, where we just like kind of sit back and let you all listen to it. But we would never be able to do that live just because of the inherent risk of doing something like that. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have another 10 from Game Theory, and thank you once again. They said, I want my LSA flag. I need that merch shop.
We
And
need
we will
it.
try to work on that. We will try to work on that eventually. It's just we're extremely swamped between doing the stream and everything else. I don't want to make any false promises to people. The merch store will be coming back around, but we can't guarantee a date that's going to be coming back around. But it will eventually. But thank you very much, Game Theory, for that support. We also have a 10 from Tuso Ka, who said U.S. should implement dedicated UAS and CUAS battalions and brigades, similar to what Ukraine and Russia has, and there won't be a silver bullet solution to the drone threat.
And that is entirely true. I would agree with you on all elements of that. And a huge thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Robert Krogan, who said, good evening, enforcers in LSA, and it just got on and was sleeping early tonight, and take one from the chat.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. Better late than never is what I always say. And I got to say, we will make sure to take one from the chat in your honor. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Trek World, who said, which American administration has had the best negotiating power in our history, either by y'all's opinion or reality? Well, I mean, if you want to say the one that had the most negotiating power, this is going to be kind of dark, but I mean, it's the truth. The administration that dropped the nuclear bombs on Japan, I mean, that's obviously a dark thing to mention, but I mean, they had some pretty quick negotiating power with that because the Japanese saw the horrific nature of the nuclear bomb and they immediately pretty much gave up. So, I mean, that was the quickest one, but obviously that was an atrocity at the same time, and that's, controversial. It did end the war. It was probably necessary to end the war to do that, but it was obviously an atrocity nonetheless, even if it was necessary. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that probably the best one with negotiating power outside of Truman with the nukes, because I mean, that's kind of the trump card, if any, would be Teddy Roosevelt, because I don't know how it was done, and this was actually kind of crazy. Teddy Roosevelt just basically telegraphed the Japanese and the Russians in the middle of the Russo-Japanese War and said, hey, it's really a shame that y'all are fighting. Y'all ought to just come together and end this whole thing, because we really don't have a stake in the matter, but it'd just be nice to see y'all stop shooting and killing each other. And so somehow the Russians and the Japanese were like, oh, he's got a point. And they went over here and they negotiated an end to the Russo-Japanese War, and it was just entirely done through pretty decent diplomacy. I mean, it was honestly kind of crazy. You don't really see that often, especially in between what at the time was two major colonial powers, which was the Russian Empire and the Empire of Japan. And so it was pretty crazy to just see the United States step in the middle of it, really no impact to us at all, and to be like, hey, it'd be nice for y'all to end that, and then somehow find a way to actually bring an end to the conflict. So I would say that's probably the best one in my opinion, but the truth is that you just don't really see a lot of administrations going around ending conflicts left and right, because generally most administrations, unlike this one, have historically known that a war concludes when it's ready to conclude, and there's really no way that you can force an end to it. What's been done recently is basically just artificial, like going around and just threatening people left and right to try and make them make a peace that doesn't last, so that you can claim that another one was ended and then it never was, and then it just starts up again. Generally I would say, though, in my opinion, it was the Roosevelt administration, the Teddy Roosevelt administration, that saw the best negotiating power and leverage just because of statesmanship and good diplomacy. But a big thanks to you for the support. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 10 from Noah Berman, who said $10 for Enforcer Matt's physics lesson and LSA, and to Lost Cause. But thank you very much for that support, and we do appreciate it. We also have a 10 from Latchback, who said, I love the Star Trek tangents, and I definitely want more. And have you ever seen the series, not the movie, Stargate SG-1? It's amazing sci-fi, great analysis as always, and LSA. And I haven't seen Stargate personally. I've not seen that. But I've watched pretty much all the Star Treks. In fact, I'm finishing another series of it again. I had to go back and rewatch them because it's been years since I watched them. And I'm currently finishing up Star Trek Enterprise again when I have a chance. So that's the one I'm working on. But yeah, I'm actually a pretty decent Star Trek fan. I'm not like a fanatic, though. Like, I just watch it just because it's something to do to pass the time. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, though, my opinion is it's a shame that they ended Star Trek Enterprise early. I think it was supposed to have 7 or 8 seasons, and then they canceled it, I think, on the 4th one. And which is a shame, because honestly, that was one of my favorites, was Star Trek Enterprise. It was honestly the most, it was one of the more relatable ones. But outside of that, I'll take you home again, Kathleen. But anyways, enough of the Star Trek rant stuff. I haven't watched Star Trek in a long time. I just remember all of the stuff from the quotable stuff from it. But I gotta say, I haven't seen Stargate SG-1. I'll have to look into that. But a huge thanks to you for the support and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Live Animal who said, I think Russia picked the UK because of its ongoing spat with the USA, and good luck to the UK for leading NATO.
And a big thanks to you for support, Live Animal, and help with this channel to keep it running. And I gotta say, I think that might be the case. And a big thanks to you for support and help with this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Becca Fly, who said, welcome home, Integrity and the crew of the Artemis. Safe splashdown off the coast of San Diego, and now aboard the USS John P. Martha.
And I got to say, great to hear that they were able to return successfully. We really didn't cover that in the course of our news today, but it's wonderful to know that the Artemis 2 mission went by without a hitch, a perfect success by every measure. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Hancho, who said, every time he uploads a pic of him wearing a hat, it's go time.
I guess so. He's got to plug that merch, you know, like Bombing Iran, sponsored by this hat. You can buy it at the store. But anyways, a big thanks to your support. And with that, we're on the next one.
And we also have a 20 Australian from Ross Nibb, and thank you very much, Ross, for that support. He said, how great is this golden age of the Middle East? Big money is being made. I guess that means big inflation for the rest of us. I hope the UK and Germany moving to war economies might mean that they will go in soon to fix the Hormuz.
And I gotta say, you never know. You never know. Like, we'll have to see. But a big thanks to you for support and help with this channel to keep on running, Ross. It's a great thing to have you here tonight. Wonderful to have you. And so a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Flash of Light, who said, I would prefer the U.S. is mass-producing $35,000 drones quickly in secret during the stalling, rather than more expensive conventional arms to the area.
I would say I would generally agree with it, but sadly, a ceasefire of 2 weeks isn't going to see us being able to produce any drones in any reasonable amount of time, sadly. So a big thanks to you for support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Bill Carswell, who said, can the USA stop exports of our oil and keep our own oil, and then let Europe have what we would be getting from anywhere else?
Sadly, no. That would lead to most likely a complete economic collapse. But a big thanks to you for support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Ulf Hednar, who said, a deal is coming from Iran. It's called the something of a deal, LSA.
Oh, man, that's a good one. But a big thanks to your support and help with this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from the console, who said, have you guys ever checked out the modern Vietnamese military? Their kit is quite interesting. And also, would they be a good ally against China?
I've checked it out a little, not a whole lot. What a voice crack right there. But I would have to say, they would be a good ally against China, and they probably would end up being one, actually, because they don't really have the greatest relationships with China, because China bullies Vietnam even over their islands that they control in the South China Sea as well. But a big thanks to you for support and help this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Corinne Harsey, who said, the Russians and Iranians must be hitting the servers to slow down the news broadcast, but keep up the good work, guys.
And we're keeping it up, hell in a high water. There's nothing that'll stop us. And a big thanks to you for support, and with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Mordaron, who said, isn't it safer and cheaper at this point to make a new strait through the Suez, like near Egypt or something, than a ground invasion?
You know, that's crazy. They actually did that like a long time ago. It's called the Suez Canal. And it's this really crazy thing. It's actually at Suez, believe it or not. You're kind of ahead of the curve there. And they built this thing in like the 1890s, basically. Really cool sort of a thing. Sadly, though, canals just ain't economically viable over this kind of a distance over Saudi Arabia and whatnot. So they could do pipelines. That would be economical, but then that brings up some concerns of its own. But there's really no way to get around the logistical confines of the Strait of Hormuz easily. But a big thanks to you for support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have another 5 from Flash of Light. You said, why can't the U.S. keep surveillance drones and planes 24/7 over Iran? Because we don't have any, and we have no defense against drones for our troops. Now, we do keep surveillance drones over the area all the time. We keep MQ-4C Tritons over the Persian Gulf pretty much all the time. I'm not sure if one got shot down yesterday. We never got any follow-up about that, but it had to return to base with an emergency. But generally, though, we keep one of the Persian Gulf all the time. We also fly, I think it's the RQ-180, I believe. It's a stealth drone. No, there's also a 180 as well, actually. They fly the 170, but there's also a 180, which is more advanced. They're flying stealth drones over Iran all the time. So we do that. And also, the Iranians really can't see it unless it flies at really low altitude because it's stealth and they can't pick it up on their radar. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd say yes, we can keep the drones over there on a continuous basis, It's just that right now we are not, because we are still pretending like there's a ceasefire in effect. So a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Ian Mitson. He said, I think it was the Sundance Resort close to you guys. They had lifts working up in the summer for bikers, and you can go down the hill on your bike. And that would be pretty cool. I might have to give that a shot. That's pretty far away though. Like that's a decent drive. It's like a pretty far drive from us. So I have to go check that out. Also, I think Sundance might have relocated to Colorado. I think recently. But Enforcer, what say you?
I think that was the Sundance Movie Festival that relocated.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Not the city.
Not the city. Not the city. The movie festival.
Yeah, Matthews, just imagine that the whole city literally just like the lane just rose up out of the ground, like grew some legs, and they just like walked off to Colorado. It's like, well, but this is Sundance is actually incredibly small. Actually, I didn't know that. No wonder they're looking for a bigger venue. This is literally like a small neighborhood in most places, but that is a pretty far ways away from us because we're in the Salt Lake City Bowl area, and basically everything on the opposite side of the Wasatch is at a minimum about an hour and a half drive away one way. So it's like 3 hours round trip. So we actually never really go over here on the east side of the Wasatch. We're basically in Salt Lake City, and that's it. Like, there's no going west because there's really nothing west of Salt Lake. There's really no going east because it takes so long to get around the corner. But beyond that, I would have to say...
Also, the gas prices, too. Like, I can't justify going that far away with the gas prices. That's like $50 to just in gas.
Man, honestly, you're kind of right. Like, you're not wrong. Like, that's definitely not wrong these days. But, you know, one day I would like to go around there and take a look at it. I guess this is the Sundance Mountain Resort that of which he speaketh, and it does look really cool. It's just that sadly we just can't get around that easy actually. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that somewhat well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Jorge Casanalo, and he said, how are we going to secure the Strait if we can't guarantee a stable stream? And exactly. JK, guys, and keep up the good work.
You got a good point, Jorge. You didn't even have to say that you were joking. You have a great point there. We apologize tremendously, and we do hope that everyone accepts our gracious apology and our begging of forgiveness, so that way we can see that these streams hopefully get better in quality. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Headstanding Penguin, who said all U.S. goals have been achieved. 1, they made Khomeini a martyr. Number 2, piss off allies. And number 3, tank economy. Sarcasm.
Santa wears night vision goggles, and he goes down the chimney. Man, did you see that clip from like back around Christmas?
No.
Oh my dude, it was the like the first so-and-so. And they were reading like a Christmas book. Santa wears night vision goggles, and he goes down the chimney. I was like, oh my god! I was like, this is rough. Like, but anyways, beyond that, though,
I didn't know that man. I had no relations with that woman.
I gotta say though that like the fire, like the pictures and all, you know, it's like, well, I mean, there was something there, but anyways, I don't know. I mean, I'm just, you know, as far as being in proximity, I mean, the proximity there.
Move on. We don't want to season the stuff.
Anyways, I do have to say, a big thanks to you for the support, and I gotta say that generally, I guess if those were the 3 objectives, we did achieve it, and so a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. With that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Kyle Padell. He said another good movie is Alien, and so Enforcers, sir, can we get a hood segment?
Oh, we can't get a hood segment, sadly. We're over time at this point, but I do thank you massively for the support, Kyle. And I gotta say, I'll have to check out that movie, Alien. Sounds very alien, but a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Flat for Life, who said Hungary has been under Russian economic influence for over a decade, and why not draw them closer to the U.S. at this time?
Because they're still under Russian economic influence, and that's apparently not going to be changing anytime soon, so we're just basically throwing money in the pit. But a big thanks to you for support. With that, we're on the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Becca Fly, who said, I find your analysis extremely cathartic. I laugh, I cry, I throw things, I come back for more, never change.
I gotta say, thank you so much for the support, and thank you for the kind words and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Waka Waka What, who said that dang Ruski coot at it again. The Poles got to do what they got to do. They got that iron in them.
They got that iron in them. The Poles, they don't kid around. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Mr. Mango, who said, thoughts on the UK making a shift to a war economy? Is this a potential sign of the end of appeasement?
It might be, or it might be a sign that they're believing that the Russians are about to attack NATO, and therefore they have to get ready for that eventuality. So, big thanks to you for support. I hope that does address that well, and we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Craig King. He said, hi guys, best channel around. And thank you, by the way. He said, I've been around since the 250,000 subs, and now you're closing in on 600,000. Do you think there will be a world war?
We don't really know at this point. I mean, the chances are becoming a lot higher now than they were when we started. But I do have to say, thank you for being around for such a long time. It's been a good minute since we hit 250. And we're happy to know that you're still here with us and still enjoying this channel at almost 600,000 subs. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And also a big shout out to Plazoth, who put in a 2, and also Terry Sanford that put in a 1. And we appreciate you both, Terry and Plazoth, for that support. We also have a 2 from Laura Rogers, who said alien tech or the lasers getting released next.
Oh, probably the lasers, I'd assume. We're closer to the lasers than the alien tech. But a big thanks to you for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 2 from Ronald McDonald, who said Europe is running out of baby oil.
Hey, yo! Hey, yo! But a big thanks to your support. And I gotta say, maybe they are. Hopefully they'll be able to turn that whole thing around. But with that, I hope that does address it the best we can. And with that, folks, that was... actually, we have one more. What do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Kyle Bedell. He said, whatever happened to the Russian Penguin Brigade?
Blown to smithereens for the large part. We don't really see them around anymore. And also the winter is kind of dissipating, so they don't really have to wear those coats anymore. So that's why we're not really seeing them. But a big thanks to you for support and help with this channel to keep it running. And with that, that is our last super chat of the entirety of the show. And it's time for us to move on into our Morse code decoders, which I do have to meet at the head here tonight. It was the exact same Morse code message as last night, but a big ding, 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 and that's the sound of money, and they got that done on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night, and a humongous congrats to them. And with that in mind, it's time for us to get the 3 live chat questions at the end of the stream, and then round this thing on out for the night. So we're on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one is going to go to Lydia, who said, what are the Iranian people saying lately? I used to see tons of videos about the people wanting freedom.
Generally, they've all kind of gotten a little bit quiet because I think they're kind of realizing that any sort of action at this point would be for naught because their goals wouldn't really be that achievable, unfortunately, at this point. So I hope that does address it the best I can. And we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And we also have a live chat question from Enjoying Life, who said, why does the U.S. act like they need Iran to open the Strait in negotiations when the U.S. has more than enough firepower to open the Strait themselves?
I'd be honest with you, I just don't know. Like, it's really weird to me. And some people say, it's because the U.S. can't open the Strait. It's like, yes, we can. We can easily open the Strait. We've been planning that militarily in the region for decades. I mean, we've been planning that longer than 50 years almost at this point, you know, so it's a little bit weird that people say that we can't do it. We easily could. But a big thanks to you for a great question. Unfortunately, I just wouldn't even know where to go to answer that one, sadly, because I don't even know why that's the case either. But with that, we actually have 2 more super chats to address. So, Matthew, what do we got?
We also have a 5 from Rano, who said, I've been watching for a few years, best channel, and long live the LSA in Hyde Park, New York. On Europe, the Hudson, I think, if I have my geography right, that's pretty cool. But thank you very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
Up there in the Yonkers. Up there in the Yonkers, like it's Yonkers. but a humongous thanks to you for the support. And I gotta say, a big shout out to you up there in Hyde Park in New York. I don't know where Hyde Park is. I'm trying to find it right now. Where in the world is it?
It's up the Hudson. It's not in New York City. It's in New York State.
Oh, I'm understanding now. It's somewhere up here. Show me where I'm getting close. And are we getting close? Oh, there it is.
It's right there.
Hey, it's right there. Hey. Oh, you got a Mexican eatery up in there. I bet you it's good. It's got to be bussin'. But a huge thanks to you for the support and help with this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, a big shout out to Crispy at 9775 who put in a 20, and thank you, Crispy, as always, for that generous support. A big shout out to Jesusium as well, who threw in a 5, but retracted the comment. It's gone, but thank you as well, Jesusium, for throwing in that support. We do appreciate that. We also have a 20 from Game Theory yet again, who said last and threw in the 20.
Hey, and a huge thanks to all of y'all for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because we're greatly appreciative of y'all's support because it makes this channel possible and it keeps this thing rolling. And so with that, folks, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that question is going to go to I'm D. Stevenson, who said, does the IRGC really think they're winning? And why else would they think that we would comply with their demands?
Surely they know that they're losing on most fronts except for the Ormuz, which is the one that they have to win on. They could lose on all the others and just win on Ormuz and win by default for the larger part. They're able to fight a war of attrition, and that's why they're largely pretty secure, at least mentally, in their position right now, is because they know that they are for the larger part. But I hope that does address that incredibly well. And a humongous thanks to Squall Renoa 89, who threw in a 2 and says, the home of the President, FDR, and library. And that's actually incredibly cool. And I got to thank you so much for the support, and I got to thank you all so much for watching. Over the course of about 3 hours and 45 minutes, we've had 24,000 people here at the peak, and 200,000 people watched this show before it ended. I have to say that we're entirely honored and greatly appreciative of so many of y'all continuing to watch this channel and enjoy it. Of course, we hope that y'all will join us all tomorrow for the next 24 hours of the news from around the world, and if there is a short video to be made, Enforcer Matt will be the one making it. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, Haram Slava, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern on the next Nightly War News stream, and we hope to see you all then as well. And if there is enough news to cover, we will be putting in, of course, a short war video midday tomorrow on the channel, so be sure to join us for that as well. But in the meantime, though, thank you all once again for joining us, and we'll see you all tomorrow. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and good night.